Happy Sunday, everyone. My name is Coach Darwin Rivers, and you are watching the live stream of the HR Cafe, Usapang Trabaho, Buhay, Iba Pa. We're now at episode 69, and as promised to you guys last week, our main guest for today is no other than HR season leader, Miss Joseline Alosbanos, and she will be discussing about how to construct effective HR policies in an uncertain world. And that's on our the second part of our program. So let us start our program by inviting each and every one of you to please um, stand by, relax, and continue to monitor us here at the HR Cafe. The HR Cafe is an online talk show program sponsored by the Philippines HR Group. And as you know, the Philippines HR Group is the largest online community of HR and HR aligned professionals in the Philippines with over 260,000 members. And as I mentioned, my name is Coach Darwin Rivers. I'm part of the HR Cafe servers or your program host. I'm the founder and president of the Philippines HR Group. I'm a certified life coach, a public speaker, a motivational speaker, and an HR consultant. Currently, I'm working as a global vice president for HR in a large multinational business processing outsourcing company. Other mentors that are part of this program is mentor John Bernard Ordonez Kaasi, who's a learning and development practitioner and educator, and also mentors Ronaldale Ferentino, who has more than 20 years of practitioner experience and the president and CEO of Approach Social Geekers. Unfortunately, mentor Rona and mentor Burns won't be able to join us this episode, but of course, the ever reliable mentor Tina Koang is with me. Hi, mentor Tina.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Bright, beautiful Sunday. It's very exciting for me to finally have Miss Joy as our special guest because I've been trying to get her as a guest for more than a year already. And I'm so glad that she can free up her schedule to share with us the results of her madugong efforts as part of the HR. I'd like to welcome people to actually leave your name, sana kung saan kayo sa Pilipinas and outside, and please leave a warm greeting so that we can have a shout out with you here at the HR Cafe. And tsaka, Coach Darwin, can we do a full screen with regards to our slides? We are at slide number 1 at the moment.
Okay, let me
Yan.
see. Is it full screen
Yan.
already?
Not yet, but we are already at slide 4.
Okay, let me just make sure that we're at full screen. Is it
Yeah.
now at full screen?
Not yet, but slide 4 na tayo. So next slide to introduce the HR Cafe.
What's happening? I am having technical difficulties right now. I'm showing a
Full
full
screen?
screen from my end. Mm-mm.
Sige. So what we can do is slide 5 na tayo. So next slide 5.
Okay.
So let's just go through with it. The slide 5.
Sure, no worries. But before
Slide 4
that,
pala
let me
tayo,
just
right?
yeah, before that, let me just introduce to you formally to our audience. Mentor Tina Koang is an operations and HR leader with broad local and overseas experience. She's a general manager for a retail company and best known for her online content and blog tinainmanila.com. We would like to invite you, our listeners and our audience, to make sure to always tune in to the HR Cafe, Trabaho, Buhay, Iba Pa. Here at the HR Cafe, we provide timely news and updates. We impart knowledge and experience that are value adding and beneficial to
Mm-hmm.
you, of course, our listeners and audience. We discuss problems, issues, and challenges and provide answers and resolutions with the help of our guest resource. If there is any new technology, tools, or processes, or best practices in the industry, we also discuss it here in our program. If you have any job openings, nako, we will be happy to announce them because we would like to make sure that we give the best opportunity to our fellow Filipino men who are looking for work right now. At the end of the day, we would like to bridge understanding between employers and employees and also inspire and motivate the Filipino working community. Now, whenever we start our program, as you know, we've been doing this for almost 2 years now, since the start of the pandemic. And we almost start our show with a positive note through our wow quote for the week. And the wow quote for the week that we have right now comes from a very popular, enigmatic leader, world leader. And during the World War II, he is Sir Winston Churchill. According to Winston Churchill, the pessimist sees difficulty in every opportunity. The optimist sees opportunity in every difficulty. Let me repeat that. The pessimist sees difficulty in every opportunity. The optimist sees opportunity in every difficulty. Ladies and gentlemen, to you guys who are watching and listening right now in our program as we go live stream, please share to us, how does this wow quote for the week resonates to you? What is the meaning of this quote in your life? So please share to us and we'll be happy to share them to our community. Let's
Oh,
go
yeah.
first with Mentor Tina. Mentor Tina, how does this
Coach
wow quote for
Dar,
the week
move
resonate?
natin
Yes.
slide yung to slide 6. We're now at slide 4 pa lang. Yeah, let's move it down to slide 6. Click, click. All right. So yung ating wow quote of the week, we're at slide 4 pa rin at the moment.
Ang weird. It's already slide 7 in my end.
Hindi, sa
Sige.
slide 6.
Would you like to to share baka it's really my PC is having some issues.
Yan,
Would
okay
you
na.
like to be okay na?
There, okay na, okay na. Sige.
Okay.
Well, sa akin, we've been talking about it for the last 2 weeks kasi we've had a lot of motivational speakers guest in our show the last 2 weeks. So what we concluded last week was that there are two types of people in the world. There's the first type of person is the one who always looks at problems. Pag
Agree.
may nangyari sa kanya, iniisip niya talaga na, naku, nakaka-stress, ang dami kong problema, bakit ako? And the second type of person is a person who sees opportunities. Meaning to say, it's for them, problems is a way for them to grow, to learn, to experience, na habang buhay pa sila, may pag-asa pa. The question to our viewers here is, what type of person are you? Are you a pessimist or are you an optimist? Kasi sa totoo lang, ang daming problema sa buong mundo. What is important though is how you react to it. And one thing kasi, usually ang mga pessimist, mas hindi masarap kasama pag kunyari dumadago na ang mundo. Pag may problema, pag may crisis, mas maganda talaga ang kasama ang optimist because they always see problems as a blessing, as a way for them to grow, as a way for them to learn. And ang mga suggestion namin is, when you actually encounter problems, do not ask, why me? You should ask, what can I do about it?
Okay.
For
Correct.
example, okay, may nagkasakit. So, syempre, masakit pag may nagkasakit, lalo na if it's our loved one. We should not worry about the fact that may sakit yung kasama natin, pero more of, what can we do about it? If ever may sakit ako, ayoko na yung kasama ko umiiyak, nagdadrama, nahihirapan. Gusto ko, patawanin ako, magsabi ng mga jokes, make life better for me, ganun. So, sa akin, ang suggestion ko lang sa tao is always look at things in a very positive way and find out what can you do to solve the problem. So with this, I'd like to greet our watchers. We have Bob Cruz saying, magandang hapon po mga ka-HR, nakaabantay dito sa Mandaluyong. Si Prau Caro says, the topic is so informative as this is an institutional guide for decision making. That is actually true. Sabi nga ni Miss Joy kanina, masyadong madugo daw talaga ang topic na to. That's why we're really glad for her to encounter this. Josh is from Binondo, Manila, representing Chinatown. Arlene Santiago is here from Valenzuela. We do have Lester from Angeles, Ayhan Cueto alia Desiree, and there is a Facebook user who says, "Wow, quote for me, this is about taking risk and getting out of your comfort zone. You should always be adaptive to change, and I am an optimist because I love challenges, I guess." Ang suggestion ko, kung gusto mong maghanap ng love of your life, be an optimist. Totoo lang. Kasi if you are a pessimist, madaling mag-give up, maraming manloloko eh. But if you are an optimist, even if you encounter heartbreaks, there is still tomorrow. At malay mo, baka may mahanap ka pang mas gwapo or mas gwapa na darating sa buhay mo. Right? Coach Darwin, to you.
Thank you for that, Tida. I agree with whatever you've said. Being an optimist is something that each and every one of us should invite, because being an optimist, you open yourself to a lot of possibilities. Now, let me just take this particular wow quote for the week in the view of an employer. As an employer
Mm.
or as a leader kasi, what I've noticed is people who are optimists, sila yung mga high performers. Sila yung may mga leadership potential. Sila yung mga taong nag-go above. Sila yung pag may issue, sila yung humahanap ng solusyon. Kasi 'di ba, sa workplace setting, pag nagkakaroon tayo ng issues and challenges ng problema, there is a group of employees na very negative, very pessimist. Sila yung mga,
Mm.
naku, papaano yan, ano na, papaano na tayo, ano nang gagawin natin, papaano natin mamimit yung deadline, papaano natin mamimake sure na ma-hit yung revenue targets, o paano natin mapiplease si boss. Yung mga taong to, nakafocus sila sa problem at lumulubog sila sa ganong sitwasyon. But believe me, you will be able to identify your high performers and your leadership, people with leadership potential, kasi sila yung nag-rise above the situation. Sila yung mga, teka lang, o sige, ito yung problema, ito yung mga pwede natin gawin. Alam mo, itong problema ito, pwede natin itong i-convert into something positive. Or paano pa natin gagawin na itong problemang to ay magiging advantageous para sa atin. So these are the people that would really reach success early. I'm not saying that that people who are pessimists will not be able to reach success. Mas mabagal nga lang. Pero people who are optimists, nako, 100%. These are the people who would rise above every situation and be able to um, uh, receive success in their lives and in their career. So ask yourself, are you a pessimist or an optimist? And if there are challenging situations in the office, which role would you like to be? If I were you, I'd always be an optimist, because optimists are the ones who gets promoted early. Optimists are the ones who are given special projects, and they are the one na talagang pinagkakatiwalaan ng leadership team, di ba? So that's it from my end. How about our audience? Meron mo ba silang may share about this well quote for the week? Mentor
We
Tina?
We do have Matilde Fernandez Balancing joining from Iloilo. Good afternoon. And Ida Laput saying good afternoon po. Again, please leave your name, where you are from, so that we can have a shout out sa HR Cafe.
Okay, so if there's no other inputs for the wow quote for the week, let's go to our HR question for the week.
Yan.
Nako, since malapit na ang 30th month pay, di ba? November na, bigayan ng 30th month pay. Actually, sa amin nga, next week na ang bigayan ng 13th month pay eh. So, may mga nagtatanong, if an employee daw resigns before or prior to the payout of the 13th month pay, is the employer obligated to release the 13th month pay separate from the full and final pay? Kasi marami mga employee nagsasabi na, uy, teka muna, kahit na nag-resign ako, bago magbigay ng 13th month pay, meron silang kino-quote sa batas na dapat daw ang 13th month pay binibigay on or before December 24, di ba? Tama ba ito para sa mga taong nag-resign? How about, what's your take on it, Mentor Tina? Hello?
Maraming nag-aaway po regarding this, right? Pero
Mm-mm.
sa akin, ba't sila nag-aaway? November 21 na. Kasi for example, pag magre-resign ka, right? If you resign right now, you have to render 30 days notice, right? So pagdating doon, dapat December 21 is your last day. Right? So after that, sasabihin nila na you should actually release your final pay 30 days from your final day after successful clearance. So that should be on January 21. But PD 851 kasi, the original act says that you have to release a 30th month pay before December 24 of the year. Sa akin lang, there is kasi may konting lusot Kasi according to DOLE Labor Advisory number 6, series of 2020, kasama po ang prorated 13th month pay doon sa final pay. At the same time, another advisory, which is PD 851, or the most recent advisory regarding the reminder of 13th month pay, says dapat by December 24th of this year, no exception. Sa
Correct.
akin, pag hindi ka naman pinapahirapan ng staff, wag mo naman pahirapan din. I would suggest releasing the 30th month pay alongside with everybody else. Kasi syempre naman, for example, nag-resign siya bukas, November 22, nag-serve naman siya ng hanggang December 22, magre-release ka naman talaga ng 13th month pay within that week. Isama mo na yung staff, wag na kayong mag-away na hanggang January pa. Because it's really a very small issue. It is something that they've actually earned. And para pag aalis na, alam mo yung parang for example, pag kunyari may breakup kayo, both sides must leave gracefully. Kasi nakakaasar minsan sa employment. Last days ka na from the side of the employer and the HR, nangaasar pa kayo sa isa't isa. Parang, alam mo yon, parang hindi ba tayo on the same team for the longest time? Wag na nating asarin ng tao, i-release na lang natin kung pwede. Because yes, you can be very technical. You can use DOLE Labor Advisory number 6 to wait until next year to release it. But what's the point? Sabi nga nila, give love on Christmas Day. Might as well give it kasi patapos na rin kayo. After this, hindi na rin kayo magkikita. So might as well. But my reaction lang po sa mga employees, wag nyo rin asarin ang mga employers ninyo kasi ang dami pa rin nagtatanong sa PHRG kung pwede ba daw ang immediate termination for whatever reasons it might be, which is not included in the labor code. Aalis ka na, wag na kayong mag-asaran. Okay? So, HR should release, but at the same time, employees should properly render. Wag mag-awol, wag mag-immediate resignation, mag-render pa rin ng 30-day notice period. Coach Darwin, what's your point on this?
Ako actually I like where you're coming from, Mentor Tina. It's really more of you're coming from a point that you would like to make sure that the situation is advantageous to the employee and that the employee will be able to enjoy his or her 30th month pay prior to Christmas, even though the
Hmm.
law or the advisory of Dole would
Yes.
actually say that if you resign prior to the payout of the 13th month pay, dapat yung 13th month pay mo,
Oo.
yung prorated 13th month pay mo, kasama yon sa full and final pay. So, ibig sabihin nito, I'm coming from a process-oriented side wherein
Yes.
if you resign, kung mag-resign po kayo, halimbawa nag-resign kayo November o kaya December, bago mag-December 24, tapos magre-render kayo ng 30 days or kaya hindi kayo nag-render ng 30 days, asahan nyo po, kailangan nyo either mag-render ng 30-day notice or magpa-clearance at makukuha nyo ang prorated 13th month pay nyo kasama po ng full and final pay nyo. Wala pong nilalabag sa batas ang mga kumpanya. Now, if
Hmm.
the company has a favorable policy, tulad ng sinasabi ni Mentor Tina, if the company has a favorable policy, then what will happen is that the company can provide the 13th month pay prior to December 21st as long as natapos halimbawa yung existing policy nyo ay nagsasabi na as long as the employee renders 30 days prior to December 24th, you can release a 13th month pay separate of the full and final pay, then it's advantageous to the employee, then you can do so. Pero kung magrereklamo po kayo sa DOLE, sasabihin nyo na hindi po nirelease yung 13th month pay ko noong December 24 on or before December 24, pero nag-resign naman po kayo, nako po, mate-technical po kayo kasi basically, pag nag-resign kayo prior to the payout of the 13th month pay, kasama po yan dapat sa full and final pay ninyo. Okay? Dapat po, malinaw po yan. Now, let's go to another update coming from the Department of Labor and Employment. Alam mo, Mentor Tina, marami ang nag-aabang nito eh. Yung, di ba, over the past
Yes,
weeks, may nag-announce na na possible daw na holiday ang November 29 to
29
December
to,
1.
yes.
November 29 to December 1 in lieu of the 3-day national vaccination program of the government. So marami talaga nag-speculate na baka mamaya holiday ng November 29. Kaya nga from our company, nag-prepare na kami. Maaga yung payroll release, maaga yung 13th
Oo.
month pay release. Kasi in-anticipate namin na baka nga holiday sa November 29. Unfortunately, mga kababayan, mga ka-HR, sabi po ng government, holiday po ang November 29 and December 1, pero ito po ay special working day. Ibig pong sabihin,
Parang
wala po
November 2
siyang
lang.
Oo, wala po siyang special holiday premium at no work, no pay po ito. Ibig sabihin, para lang po siya ordinaryong araw. Sinasabi lang yon na kaya lang siya special kasi nag-announce ang gobyerno na nung araw na iyon ay part
May
ng national vaccination period, yung 3-day national vaccination period. Pero ang November 30 po, kung alalahanin nyo, ay part po siya ng holiday advisory for 2021. Ito po ay because it's Andres Bonifacio's Day or ito po yung pag-alala sa kapanganakan ng ating bayani na si God Andres Bonifacio ng November 30. Kaya po ito ay regular holiday. Okay? So November 29, December 1, hindi po siya holiday. Bagkos ito po ay special working holiday. Wala pong special pay, special premium, no work, no pay po siya. Pero ang November 30 is a regular holiday. Pag sinabing regular holiday, may special premium pag trabaho kayo. At of course, if you do not come to work, you still get your pay as long as you're present a day prior to the holiday. Okay? So, at pinapaalalahanin din po namin lahat baka marami po ang hindi nakakaalam. Naglabas din po ng vaccination mandate ang gobyerno na come December 1, ito yung pinag-uusapan namin nila Ivy sa ng mga heads ng HR sa BPO kasi talagang apektado kami nito. Come November 1, sabi po ng gobyerno, hindi po pwedeng makapasok or
December
pumasok
1.
sa trabaho. Yes, hindi pwedeng pumasok sa trabaho ang mga empleyado na hindi fully vaccinated.
Oh.
Uulitin ko po. Ayon po sa gobyerno, come December 1, because of the vaccination mandate, employees are not allowed to go to work if they are not fully vaccinated. Pag sinabi pong fully vaccinated, dapat naka-2 dose kayo ng COVID vaccine. 14 days prior to December 1. Now, kung hindi pa po kayo fully vaccinated, ang sinasabi po ng gobyerno ay kailangan nyo pong mag-undergo ng RT-PCR test. At kayo po ang magbabayad ng RT-PCR test, hindi po ang kumpanya. Lalong-lalo na po sa mga tao naman na ayaw magpa-vaccine. Kung ayaw nyo pong kumuha ng vaccine, karapatan nyo po yan, pero every week, kailangan nyo pong mag-RT-PCR test. So yan po ang vaccination mandate at alam ko maglalabas pa ng karagdagang information ang gobyerno about this. Pero kami sa BPO industry, sa IT industry, we've been drafting already the policies in support of the national vaccination mandate. Pero alam ko, Mentor Tina, sa retail, 'di ba? At karaniwan ngayon sa mga establishments, hindi talaga pinapapasok yung mga hindi pa vaccinated na empleyado. Tama ba ako, Metrina?
We're waiting for advisories. Okay? Kasi
Mm.
different we have we have in different malls. So different malls are in different LGUs and have different advisories. So far, may pinapapasok. They are still allowing customers to come in, but they are very strict with dine in. Meaning to
Mhm.
say, if you are a dine in, they will really ask you for proof of vaccination that you're fully vaccinated. With regards to staff, they're still okay so long as you are not part of the dining restaurant or personal care. Wala pang notice with regards to December 1, so we are still waiting. Pero if you
Okay.
do not want to be registered, ang lusot dyan is there is a loophole na nagsasabi that if you can get an exemption from a public health provider, from an LGU, that you have reasons not to be vaccinated, then okay, pumasok. So what we are
As
doing
long as
right
may
now,
RT-PCR test.
RT-PCR. So if you
Mm-mm.
have any reason for you not to get vaccinated, you can get it verified with a public health provider like a public hospital, a public clinic, sa LGU. If you can get that document, then you do not need to be vaccinated at all. So what we are doing right now is we are asking people who refuse to be vaccinated to get that piece of paper in 2 weeks time. If they have that piece of paper by December 1, they can go into any establishment without any problems. Eh pag sinabi na, ma'am,
Mm.
paano ko makukuha yon? Well, if you have reasons, valid reasons not to be vaccinated, you will be able to get it. If you do not have valid reasons, we have been telling you about this ever since. So, malinis na po yung kamay namin. So, na yun, fully vaccinated na kami.
That's
Wala
good.
na
That's
kaming
good.
anti-vaxxers. Yes. But I think
That's
we will
good.
wait for more information because I
Agree kasi
believe the government will probably be very lenient na kahit papaano at least one jab. 'Di ba? Kasi after the one jab, susunod na yung pangalawa. Scheduled na po yan. So I'll wait for more information before panicking. It will probably come mga three days before. Pero meron ka na dapat na release na what if December 1 bawal and what if December 1, you already prepared that.
correct.
Kasi it
There
will
should be
only
policies
take
in
mga,
place.
yes, 2 to 3 days lang talaga ang lead time. Kung hindi kayo prepared, marami magrereklamo.
Okay, so that's it from my end. Advisory for from Dole. Again, November 29 and December 1 are special working holidays, meaning it's a no work, no pay, and also there's no holiday premium. But November 30 is a regular holiday. Again, for the vaccination mandate naman, sinasabi ng government by December 1, kailangan fully vaccinated na tayo. Mag-abang lang po tayo ng additional information kasi marami po talaga ang nag-aabang kung ano po yung mga guidelines sa ilalabas ng IATF at ng DOH. Now, for updates regarding SSS, Mentor Tina,
Yes.
please, ano ba
I
update
would like
natin?
All right. I would first like to greet a few people. Arlene Santiago said on the Wow Quote of the Week, the more problems, the more we learn and practice critical thinking. Yes, critical thinking capabilities is very important now. And if you have it, ang daming mga problema na mawawala. We do have Remar Punzalan Maluto who says, good day, Remar here from Las Piñas. Cipriano Caro says, pleasant afternoon to everyone. Romel Estrada says hi and tag Lorna Tolentino. And then Lorna Tolentino said, Opo, sir. So thank you so much for the tag. With regards to the question a while ago, Mary Jane Rettig said, question po halimbawa si employee may cash advance or company loan, is the company allowed to deduct the loan from their 13th month pay? Oh, ulitin natin ha. If the staff has bale or loan, pwede po bang mag-deduct sa 13th month pay? Ang sagot ko is not related to 13th month pay. Ang sagot ko is related to how you construct your loan. Okay? In our company, when we do have loans, we do it in short of a promissory note wherein we actually put in kung magkano yung inutang ng staff and paano niyang babayaran. Please do not charge them pag sa 13th month pay. Dapat sa pag-construct pa lang ng loan, nakasulat na pwede niyong bawasan yung loan na yon kasama sa 13th month pay. That is part of a payment structure. Don't do it after nabigay mo na yung pera. Do it
Correct.
bago ninyo bigyan yung pera. So for example, if you want to give a staff 10,000, lagay mo na din yung mga dates kung saan nyo siya babawasan. Add nyo na rin yung December 23 or December 24 for the 13th month pay. Para walang problema. Kasi later on, mahirap talaga magbawas kung wala kang authority to deduct. And I'm not
Correct.
very comfortable to deduct anything pag walang nakasulat. All right? So that's my fun tip. Whenever you do a loan, please make sure nakasulat na dyan yung payment. And pag nag-resign, pag nag-awol, paano nyo sisingilin yung tao? Nandun na siya sa primary document before you release the pera. Make sure it is standardized and notarized, lalo na if malaki yung amount. Huwag na po tayo mag-voucher-voucher lang. Kasi yung mga voucher is nakasulat lang kung magkano yung nilabas, hindi nakasulat kung paano yung pagbabayad.
Agree.
Next. So the Philippine SSS says na wag na po tayong mag-report, wag na tayong mag-access sa mga ibang tao, maghanap ng ibang contacts para mag-register po sa mga SSS information natin. Kasi a lot of people, they're still depending po sa mga Facebook on mga yung how to register. Madali lang po mag-register for SSS. You can actually do it online. You can upload everything online. Worst case scenario, bukas na po yung over-the-counter natin. Pero please, wag tayong maghanap ng mga middlemen because they can access your information. They can get your information and do many things about it. Kahit na magkano po yun, 150, 300 pesos for the convenience. SSS is warning us, please do not go through middlemen to get your SSS details. All right? Very easy lang po siya. Register online. If you cannot, there is over the counter already. Do not go for any middlemen anymore. Okay? And while you are doing so, already try to also have access to your My SSS online portal account. Okay, next.
Bawal po ang fixer sa SSS.
All right. SSS is also reminding everyone there is unemployment benefits on offer for those who have been terminated over the last couple of months for authorized causes. Ano yung authorized causes? Retrenchment, redundancy, closure of business, if you were sick for a long period of time, authorized causes, pwede po kayong mag-apply ng unemployment benefits sa SSS. The amount will be at least your 1 month pay based on your monthly salary credit. Sino pong pwedeng sumama? Yung mga tao na may 36 contributions. So talaga with SSS, the magic number is really 36. Please make sure that you actually have at least 36 contributions, 12 of which are part of that semester of contingency. So at least kahit na papaano, karagdagang tulong yon. For me, it's libreng pera. So make sure po na nakaregister tayo at nakabayad sa SSS. Next. SSS advisory as well with the lowering of COVID-19 alert level number 2. Bukas na po yung service hours nila from 8 o'clock to 5 p.m. Mondays to Fridays. Regardless of that, kahit na meron silang Dropbox system, we have to be very conscious that they have their branch number coding system pa rin. And
Correct.
please book appointments if you can. A lot of people are asking about loan condonations if they are eligible. The first question I always ask them is, nakaka-access po ba kayo sa my.sss online portal ninyo? Because a lot of people hindi pa naka-register or hindi maka-access. So this is a very good chance for you to actually reset and get your username and password so that you can access your SSS online portal. Kasi sobra, hindi lang sa loan condonation, but you can actually monitor your contributions, loan payments, apply for salary loans, calamity loans. Make sure you can monitor if your companies have been applying for your sickness benefits, maternity benefits. So please, if you don't have it yet, take this time to get access to your my.sss online account. Sobrang laking tulong talaga niya. And para afterwards, hindi na po tayo kailangan mag-over the counter because everything can be done online. Okay? Next. So here, what we can say nga talaga is ang laking talagang tulong sa my.sss. So SSS is telling us the difference of ano yung mga services nila na over the counter, and then ano ay yung services nila talaga na you can use sa my.sss. Please make sure to register rin your bank account. Okay? It's a bit of a hassle to do it, but it is really sa a lot of people kasi sabi nila, "Ma'am, bakit hindi pa napapasok yung inutang ko sa SSS?" Sabi ko, "Nag-register na ba kayo ng bank account ninyo doon sa My SSS?" Hindi pa pala. So it takes a few more days to register it. So please do it na now. Next. All right. Same with PhilHealth. Make sure that you register your PhilHealth ID kasi baka peke po yung binibigay sa inyo. And baka ibang tao ang makagamit ng information ninyo to get PhilHealth services. So please make sure walang fixers, don't go through a middleman anymore. All right? Next.
Okay, so let me just go ahead and greet our sponsors that continues to help us and support us, not only at the HR Cafe, but the Philippines HR Group. El Puerto Marina Beach Resort and Vacation Club. They have resorts and vacation club in Pangasinan, in Boracay, and in Palawan. If you are a member of the Philippines HR Group or an avid listener of the HR Cafe, Usapang Trabaho, Buhay, Iba Pa, please reach out to their FB page, El Puerto Marina Beach Resort and Vacation Club, like their FB page, and message them. Tell them that you're a member of the Philippines HR Group, and special discounted rates will be given to you. Also, if your company is looking for an online certification program, the Philippines HR Group has a partnership with People Matters Singapore and People Matters India. With this partnership, all members of the Philippines HR Group as well as their company gets 25% off. This is a 25% discount by using the discount code PHRG25. There are a lot of certification programs that is being availed by top Fortune 500 companies. Uh, Among them are visual recruiting and onboarding, virtual performance management, and reimagining employee experience. So if you're looking for an online virtual certification program, please log in to peoplematters.com or reach out to People Matters and FB page. Next is, if your company is looking for a cloud-based HR management system, People Force is a company that you would like to look into. People Force offers timekeeping, payroll, recruitment, engagement, and also performance management. So, all members of the Philippines HR Group, as well as listeners of the HR Cafe, you just need to reach out to their FB page, People Force HRM or People Force in Facebook. Inform them that you are a member of the Philippines HR Group, and you will be entitled to a 14 days free trial so that you'll be able to appreciate how this cloud-based HR management system can help your organizations grow better. Also, we would like to thank MaxiCare because MaxiCare is offering two products right now. These are postpaid products. One is MaxiCare Prima Silver. This is a postpaid HMO benefit program for individuals up to 59 years of age. And also MaxiCare Prima Gold. This is for seniors 60 years old and above. If you would like to know more about this particular product, go to www.shop.maxicare.com.ph. Make sure that you indicate there that you're a member of the Philippines HR Group, and you will get special discounts and rates. Now, if your company would like to sponsor any of the events of the Philippines HR Group, also it's supporting the HR Cafe, please reach out to any of our mentors, Mentors Tina, Mentors Rona, Mentors Burns, or yours truly, Coach Darwin Rivers. You can reach out to us also through our FB page or by sending me an email, darwinrivers@yahoo.com. If you have any questions related to HR, please make sure to post it at the Philippines HR Group FB page. We also have a growing group in LinkedIn. Just if you're in LinkedIn, just search for Philippines HR Group, and we have a growing community there. Now, Mentor Tina, as promised, no, part two of our program is about how to construct effective HR policies in an uncertain world. Ikaw ba, Mentor Tina, bago natin anyayahan yung ating speaker na si Miss Jo Alosbanos, when you were starting in HR, at 'di ba isa sa pinakamahirap na gawin is yung policy creation, 'di ba?
I've never realized that HR requires so much writing. I'm not kidding, right? When you do HR, you always think about it's about people management, payroll, compensation. But HR, I've never realized that business writing and critical thinking are both you really need that, because if you do not write it down, it doesn't count. Ulitin ko, if you don't write things down, it doesn't count. And ang problema sa many companies is a lot of culture, a lot of procedures, a lot of how things go, operational day-to-day things, walang nakasulat. So when I first started, I actually have to write the rules and regulations. I think that's one of the things that most HR need to do. One of the joys of working in a startup or a company na wala pang masyadong rules and regulations is you actually have to put it down on paper. You start with a few pages, and then as the years go on and problems arise, you increase the number of rules and regulations para talagang klarong-klaro lahat. Everything must be well documented. So talagang for me, I'm very excited to have Miss Joy with us kasi it's really madugo, and there nothing is common sense. A lot of people say common sense 'yan, 'di ba? Hindi. Hindi talaga. And ang problema, pag hindi pa nakasulat, hindi nakaspecify, hahanapan ka talaga ng lusot ng staff mo. For example, penalties, absences. Kunyari, for example, late absences. If you do not write down your proper procedure, ang hirap talaga mag-discipline sa mga empleyado. Like, where do you draw the line? So for me talaga, I'm very excited to hear Miss Joseline speak kasi ang hirap because nothing is common sense. You have to write it down, and even for the most experienced HR practitioner, may kulang pa rin talaga sa ating mga documentation. Admittedly. And it's always good to hear other people talk about how they do theirs. Kasi it's benchmarking. Ano pa ang kulang natin sa sarili nating mga HR policies? With regards to uncertain world, matagal na tayong uncertain world eh. Pre-pandemic, uncertain talaga because really, we are handling people. Sabi nga ng tao, no matter how many masterals or PhD you have, it's still very difficult to master HR because people change all the time. And if we do not know how to adjust, if we do not know how to think, we will really get behind. Coach Darwin, what is your view with regards to this? Kasi ikaw
I
sobra kang
def
experience eh. I mean, come on, right? You've been in the largest companies talaga. How is it for you?
Oh, well, as mentioned, no, I've been into large multinational companies. I've also been part of startup companies or companies that are establishing their foothold here in the Philippines. And one of the things that I learned is napakahirap talaga mag-create ng policies from the scratch. Lalo na
Mm,
kung you need to create a certain policy or process. And there are a lot of elements, and I'm sure Joseline Alosbanos will be able to discuss this in detail. But one of the important elements that whenever you're creating a HR policy is kailangan, sabi mo nga, Mentor Tina, kailangan maalam ka sa business writing. Another thing is kailangan you have collaborations with different department para maintindihan mo bakit mo kailangan gawin yung policy na to. Also, you have to be very knowledgeable in labor law because
yes.
for you to be able to create a a policy that is effective, it should also be in accordance with existing Philippine labor laws. Kasi kung hindi, may policy ka nga, pero ma-overrule ka naman pag nagkaroon ka ng kaso sa labor kasi hindi consistent yung policy mo sa kung anong sinasabi ng batas. Aside from collaboration with departments, aside from being able to be knowledgeable with the labor law, aside from being able to be very good in business writing, another thing that I remember whenever I create policies is I normally create policy putting myself in the position of management. You have to remember this, putting yourself in the position of management pag dinadraft mo yung policy. Pag natapos mo na yung policy, put yourself in the position of the employee while reviewing it. Because you need to make sure, is your policy just? Is your policy something that employees will be able to appreciate, understand, and live with while working your organization? Diba? Kasi minsan, ang sobrang technical ang ibang mga HR, they're creating a policy na just wearing a management hat at napaka-stringent at napaka-rigid ng policy na hindi nila titignan yung opinion or yung point of view ng empleyado, which is yung policy na yon, sila yung maapektuhan. So again, from my end, my best practice is whenever you're drafting a policy, wear the hat of management. Whenever you're reviewing the policy, wear the hat of an employee and be able to, and I'm sure you'll be able to create one good hell of a policy. Now, let's go to our second part, which is really the introduction of our guest speaker for today. As mentioned, employees are responsible for following established norms and behavior inside the organization. HR policies often set standards for working hours like attendance, workplace conduct, health, and safety. Creating effective HR policies help employees better understand their benefits, salaries, and employment conditions, thus reducing grievances. Our speaker for today is Miss Joseline Alosbanos. I've known Joseline for the longest time. She's also one of the founding members of the Philippines HR Group. And Joseline is currently the head of Velocity Solutions, which is, if I'm not mistaken, it's an IT company. But over the years, just to give you a brief background of who Joseline Alosbanos is, Joseline Alosbanos graduated Bachelor of Science in Industrial Psychology, and she took her masterals at the Rizal Technical University, and also she took CHRP, or Certified Human Resource Practitioner course, at the International Federation of Professional Managers of the Philippines. She rose from the ranks from being an HR officer to being a supervisor, and have done different HR consultancy work over the years. Ladies and gentlemen, our good friend, Miss Joseline Alosbanos. Hi, Jo.
Mute.
Jo, you're on mute.
Mute po.
Sorry. I'm okay na. Can you hear me?
Okay,
Okay.
very good. Yeah.
Good.
Can you hear me, guys?
Jo, we have
Okay na.
more than 100 people right now listening
sorry.
and waiting
Oh,
for
God.
your discussion about how to create a effective HR policy. I'm confident you'll be able to discuss
Yeah.
ano ang importance ng HR policy at ano yung paano ba talaga mag-draft ng isang HR policy. So we'll give you the floor, Jo, and later on, Mentor Tina
Yeah.
and I will be back. We'll give you the floor, and good luck to you, Jo.
Yeah. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Joseline Alosbanos, CHRP. I'm an HR practitioner for more than 20 years. To give you an idea, I've been exposed to various industries now, from food service, oil and gas, outsourcing, and now I'm with IT outsourcing. Um, I graduated from PUP Manila, and I have some masteral units from the Rizal Technological University. And currently, I'm working, as I mentioned, in Velocity Solution, and I'm doing some consulting work. Sorry, hindi ko pwedeng disclose ngayon, confidential po siya. I will be talking how to construct an effective HR policy in an uncertain world. Okay, hold on. Wait. My agenda for today is what is a company policy? Ano po yung company policy in the viewpoint of human resources? Our role in this particular area, how COVID-19 affected how we manage and how we develop policies, how to develop your HR policy, and last but not the least, the important HR policy you have to put in place when you are in this department. Next. Okay. Ano po yung tinatawag na company policy? Hold on. Sorry. Okay. Ito po ay set of guidelines for employers to follow a defined procedure established for the business interests of employer and the rights of employee. Please take note, these are set of guidelines for both employers and employees. It defines a procedure and establishes the business interests of both the employer and, last but not the least, the right of the employee. Okay? Constructed based on structure of the business, implemented implemented to manage certain areas of the organization, particularly in HR po. We're talking about the company culture, general administration, employee engagement / relations, performance management, compensation and benefits, etc. This is ideally handled to employees at the time of onboarding, and it's safe in a unified location. When you are in HR, the first thing you do is to orient everybody on your policies, house rules. You also issue handbooks. The handbook is a sort of a microscopic view of the company policy. Hindi po lahat ng nakalagay doon sa general company policy po inilalagay natin sa handbook. Binibigyan lang natin siya ng short statement kung ano po yung policy ng company towards certain items. Next. What is the role of HR in policy development? Okay. We create HR policies for the organization in collaboration with management. Tayo po yung in charge sa part ng HR. In many companies, you have other standard operating procedure or policy that covers their own department on how they do things. In HR, tayo yung in charge in general for everything. Our expertise will decide the right combination of workplace culture and policy. Kasi it can either help or create problems and for when developing a policy po. We implement HR policy through communication. I'll explain this later po kung paano po yung gagawin ninyo. And we interpret HR policy by providing training on how to interpret HR policy. Okay, next. Let's be honest, COVID-19 has affected HR policy in general. Bakit ko sinabi yon? When COVID-19 struck, everybody was caught off guard, including myself. When I was doing the work from home policy po, sudden hindi pa ho approve yung when COVID-19 struck. I was almost at the end of developing the policy. I was in constant communication with with the management on how to do it, with drafts that I sent them and getting their feedback po. What we did, we as HR practitioner, we either enhanced our existing HR policy, we adapted it to comply with government issued guidelines coming from particularly the IATF, DOLE, and TTI, or mag-o-overhaul ho tayo ng policy. We We need to adapt our policy in terms of what just happened. Through policy, we also introduce temporary arrangement, which are of course short term until we go back to the new normal. As I mentioned earlier, nag-issue tayo ng temporary arrangement, pero kailangan din may kasama din siya or kakabit siya na policy po. This includes the following: subsidies, hazard pay, telework slash remote slash hybrid, talent acquisition, return to work arrangement, and other remedial policies po. Okay, so how do you develop your HR policy? I will not go into great lengths on how to do HR policy kasi there are styles, there are means, and there are ways to develop an HR policy. I will dwell on key factors or key areas that we need to know when you develop your HR policy po. Okay, number one, you identify the need for policy, determine the content of the policy, obtain stakeholder support, disseminate your policy through communication, update slash revise your policy. Okay. Number one, we identify the need of the policy. Our policy should provide a clear guidelines and expectation to ensure a fair and consistent practice and compliance po. Why are we doing it? Number one, pag yung employee's behavior indicates some level of confusion on the appropriate or yung tamang conduct in handling certain situation in the workplace, ito po yun. For example, if you have policies na, for example, you have 12BL, 12LL, and you have employees beforehand na doesn't enjoy that, it create confusion. Or how do you implement a hazard pay in the workplace? Pag wala yung policy, of course, there are certain expectation na you need to address that immediately po. Number two, legal protection. Yes, the labor code is strict when it comes to certain areas na hindi documented. In order to protect the companies, we have to create a policy. And at the same time, three, it should be compliant to government laws and regulation. As Attorney Jake Del Puerto, another HR practitioner slash lawyer mentioned, pag wala po yung documentation, gray area po yan. Therefore, it's going to be questioned by labor pag nagkaroon ng inspection or you are being led to through SENA na bakit wala po itong policy. This is what we're trying to avoid as much as possible po. Four, we create consistent standards and rules as well as consistency and fair treatment employees. As I mentioned earlier, you have to create consistent standard and rule, meaning dapat planchado siya, at the same time fair towards everybody. At the same time, it has to be consistent and the employees would be fairly treated by the employer. It's fairness on both employer and employee side, attending to the business need of the company plus the employee welfare in general po. Next, what if you already have one in place? There are certain situations wherein, I think I saw one of them, walang documentation, pero existing na po siya. Pag existing na po siya, it means that you have to formalize your policy in paper po. How do you do that? For example, if there are old policies, old general memos issued by the company when it comes to your employment or employment related issues, and it is not documented, therefore it is time to document that. How? Review the content of the policy. This is where you start creating your policy based on memos, old memos, and guidelines issued by the company po. So, how do you do that? Trace all documents from the time that that policy or that informal policy comes into the picture po. Then you start drafting your policies. You determine your policy content here. This is the second part of policy creation po. Policies in general should be clear, definite, and explicit. There should be no room or no way to be misinterpreted po. Like I said, maliwanag po siya, very definite po yung definition at rules and regulation or guidelines or procedures, and very explicit. It should be very clear. It should be very, very explicit, meaning maliwanag po to. Ito po yung dapat. There's, like I said, pag nagkaroon po ng misinterpretation, you go back to square one. Okay. When creating one, the following should be kept in mind. It should be clear language, meaning hindi po it should be straightforward and should I say medyo po prangka po siya. Avoid language that conveys rigidity. Pag rigid po yung language, parang hindi po maganda yung pakinggan sa employee. Like I said, there should be fair treatment towards the employee. Rigid language is not she called it allowed, or at least hindi dapat po nakasulat siya. Flexibility should be built into the wording. The language should be flexible enough for managers in interpreting and applying policies because of circumstances or severity in company violation. Where you're dealing with employee relations po, we always look for circumstances and supporting circumstances to justify kung bakit nangyari to. Managers are given that flexibility to interpret this if they feel that there is a violation because there is some problems or issues. It should be interpreted by the manager, but not necessarily or totally na tinatawag nating magiging unfair on the part of the employee. This is where HR comes into the picture. If there are problems when it comes to interpretation, the manager should consult with HR po. So, what is a policy document structure? It may include the following. Number one, yung position title po. For example, document title niya is Vacation Leave Policy. Policy statement. Ano po yung tungkol do sa policy na yun? For example, the company is giving each employee a total of 15 BL for 1 year. This is to, for example, allow the employee to take their leaves of absences to rest, recuperate, and attend to personal matters. Coverage. Sino po yung covered ng policy? Of course, lahat tayo covered yan. This policy covers all employees from rank and file up to managers who have worked with the company for more than 1 year, for example. Glossary or definition of terms. If you are using jargons, this defines where your jargon comes in. For example, OT. Obvious naman, vacation o overtime pay, overtime po yun. Guidelines. This is a general policy, for example, mentioning kung ano po yung entitlement ng employee, paano niya ina-earn, at paano niya i-avail. Procedures. These are more thorough procedures like ano po yung gagawin ng employee, for example, pag magpa-file po siya ng leave. Ano po yung procedure na magpa-file ba siya ng leave on or before 1 week, 2 weeks, 7 days, pag emergency, ilang oras kung kailan po siya mag-notify sa employer. It also puts there as well the rights of the management. For example, for the case of vacation leave, the employer or the managers can either approve or refuse and or suggest when the person can render this vacation leave should the leave application be disapproved. Effectivity date. Kailan po nag-effective po yung policy? Of course, obviously naman po, ang effectivity date po ng policy mo would be on the day the management has approved it and disseminated to everybody. Approvals. These are signatures of who created the policy. Of course, in our part, tayo po yung signatory on the part, and signed by the manager or the president of the company. If your company is ISO certified or aiming to get ISO certification po, this is where the date comes into the picture, effective date. But this is more on a thorough form. Initial listing kung kailan po siya nag-start. Item number 1 yan, date effective, and blank po yung susunod. Kung nagkaroon po ng revision po ito, item number 2 siya, and date when it affected, and it tells there saan po yung binago nyo. Mahigpit po si ISO pagdating sa revisions po. It has to be enumerated where reflective of changes you have done for your policy. So, obtain stakeholder support. Of course, management should be consulted during the creation of the policy to gain inputs or suggestions. There are companies that have committees just to attend to policy creation, policy revision, or additionals, for example. It can be the opposite. Management requests the new policy or revision of an old one. I have experienced this last 2 years ago when management approached me to change the overtime allowance of our company. To give an idea, iba po yung implementation doon sa isa. You have this business unit, so dalawang group po sila. Ang nangyari, they have their own overtime allowance and the other group has their own as well. What they requested is to consolidate both. So when I did that policy, I took the best of what they did. 100, 200 pesos yata for those who have received and 100 kung wala, which is the other group's proposal. At the same time, yung 200 pesos kunwari ng isang grupo, in-apply ko naman po dun sa isa. Ganun po yung sitwasyon. So, when I created the policy, it took me like 3 weeks to figure out how to balance both. It can be beneficial to both parties. At the same time, management is okay with the idea na, okay, we can give them allowances. However, we need to define where and when or how are you entitled to. When there are cases wherein the management is not part of the committee or ikaw yung nag-create ng policy, before having it approved, you have to communicate with managers and supervisors on the policy. As I mentioned, hindi po sila kasama sa consultation nor are they part of the committee. So if you issue a policy like this, of course magre-react po yung manager or supervisor. Ang sasabihin nila sa atin, bakit hindi nyo kami kinonsulta? Di ba dapat may input din kami? So before having it finalized, you have to talk to managers and supervisors on that part. This is where yung input nila, suggestions or anything that they feel is not covered will be taken into consideration po. Because of the fact that we need to consult them, they will implement your policy. Excuse me. Sorry, cellphone ko. So we expect them to implement this. Remember, we develop our policies, we expect to implement them, and the ones helping us to implement these things are our department managers or business unit heads. As such, at this point, we get that support, the necessary support. But if they're not happy with the support with that consultation part, you will not get their support at all. And I should know because I've been through that before. I created the policy. That person wasn't happy about what I did. We were trying to explain it to her before it had to be approved, but she wasn't happy. In fact, she went as far as the general manager to oppose that. And the general manager gave me that instruction. So, bumabalik sa akin yung question. So, we had to resolve that immediately by calling on a meeting for that manager to clarify those areas that she feel she wasn't happy about. Next, dissemination. Ito po yung masakit po sa pagiging HR. You disseminate the policy and you don't know how people will react to you in terms of when you implement policies and parang medyo they're not happy. Either they're a passive or sort of like asking a lot of questions about that. Okay. We should the company should must provide employee background information on why this has to be done or why the policy has to be implemented, and we should give enough time or info to make it clear about the policy while keeping as much as possible the process of introducing a policy short and simple. Okay, we do determine the best approach based on nature sensitive and ease. Take note po, nature sensitive and ease po. Sensitivity taken into consideration dito. Example, if you're going to introduce your policy, ano po yung approach niyo to inform everybody that there is a new policy in place? Examples should include group or town hall meetings, mga general assemblies, company memo, bulletin board, memos, etc. You have to take the opportunity to during this period for employee to ask questions. As in, if you implement a policy po, marami pong tanong yan, ranging from what it is for me, ano yung procedure. Kahit naka-enumerate po yung procedure, magtatanong pa rin po yung mga yan. You have to make it as much as possible clear or clarify any questions that may be raised. After you've done so, you have to issue an acknowledgement statement, meaning there should be a parang attendance sheet of sorts. But this is for acknowledgement po, hindi po attendance during the town hall meeting. That everybody are informed and understand the policy. That document is part of the annex of the company policy and should be kept in the files. Okay, next. After this, you have to advise everybody kung kailan at saan ilalagay yung policy na ilalagay na nung policy na implement niyo. For example, if you have an existing intranet or electronic bulletin board, it should be included there. Of course, employee handbooks should be revised, reflecting the changes that you did. Bulletin boards, typically, if you're going to put it in a bulletin board format, at least 1 week or 2 weeks to the maximum po. Kasi later on, mapapatungan din po siya ng bagong rules eh. So, after that, itago nyo po yun and should be kept. If you have branches or departments na medyo malayo po sa inyong main office, your communication doesn't end here kung tutusin. Like I said earlier, any employees will still ask questions. Kung ano yung hindi nila ni-raise sa town hall meeting or group meetings or when you introduce the policy, they will go to you individually. Typically, ang Pilipino po nahihiya po magtanong lalo po pag General Assembly. They would talk among themselves and mayroon silang, how do you call it, representative po para tanungin yung HR, ma'am, tanong po namin to. Pasensya na po, hindi ho namin na tatanong sa General Assembly. Ano po yung blah, blah, blah? Ano po yung klaro? Ano po yung gagawin namin? So, you are you have to approach them in a way na expect that line of questioning. Not just from staff but also managers. Minsan, kahit naka-stakeholder manager, medyo na iba po yung pagde-disseminate, medyo may nalimutan, managers will still approach you. Oh, akala ko ito yung policy natin, bakit parang nag-iba yata? It does happen from time to time. And last but not least is interpret. As I mentioned, flexibility on the part of the managers to interpret the provision of the policy based on circumstances or situations that it comes. So sometimes if they think they interpret it wrong or they don't understand it right, you have to interpret the policy in front of them. Last but not least is update and revise your policies. All policies should be reviewed on a regular basis. Then it all indicates the commitment to a positive work environment. Um, Policies are can change. Policy can evolve. Policies can be outdated as well. So there should be a regular review of company policies po. And you will need to ensure that they comply with labor laws. You know how strict labor laws are. If there are changes in an instant, we have to adapt to that. Classic example po yung yung period where before the pandemic, di ba, nag-issue si Dole ng Department Advisory on the release of the final pay and certificate of employment. Classic po ito. Prior to that, we can hold the salary of the employee as far as, unfortunately, as I know, 1 year. I have an employee, it took him like 1 year before he got his final pay po. And until such time, he was asking me a lot of questions like me, you're not supposed to wait for that. Okay, certificate of employment. Certificate of employment are now issued in 3 days time po. Hindi 1 week. Hindi kung anong nasa mood ni HR. Kung sino yung in charge ng certification. In the past, we're often being cited pagdating sa COEs. So now, that department order defines that you need to issue the final pay within 30 days upon successful completion of clearance procedure unless may nangyari. For example, if you never surrendered your ID, sorry, not ID, company keys for example, SIM card, laptop, pwede natin i-hold ng mas matagal sa 30 days. Because we're talking about material accountability. Dole doesn't care if you didn't turn over your task properly. Material, yes, you can hold as far as you can. Or with COEs, within 3 days, you need to release that. That is how things are. So, if you have a policy pertaining to final pay, clearance procedure, and certificate of employment, this changes everything. As I mentioned, we need to comply with laws and changes. Company practice, yes. For example, if you have a leave policy, for example, bigla yung kinaasahan ng 15 days, for example, ang existing nyo is 12 days, you need to change your policy to reflect those change. You need to be updated then with what is happening in the industry in general. Meaning, if there are standard practices that changes, it also has to reflect the changes in your policy. The ideal time for revisions or reviews are at least once a year. Of course, obvious. Or when I say pwede once a year, pero pag may nagkaroon ng situation wherein there is a prompt of change, you have to review it immediately. All policies must be rewritten to reflect those changes. And then ISO certified companies po or aiming for ISO. Your previous HR policies are immediately disposed once a new document is submitted. Pag may changes po sa documentation, the document controller or the one in charge of ISO accreditation po will dispose of your old policies and then you you have to submit a new document to change that. Pag may bago po, typically umiikot po yan sa company. Those who are in charge of departments. Pinapipirma sila electronically. Kami in HR, of course, kailangan namin pirmahan yung changes. Pagtapos na po siya, pinapasok po siya sa company intranet or sa documentation manual po ng ISO companies. And they immediately dispose of all copies, meaning they shred it para wala na pong traces po ng old policy. Okay, I think this is the last, I suppose, I think. Okay, these are the important HR policies you need to put in place. I am going to categorize them into various departments. Talent acquisition and onboarding, employee movement, for example, transfer, whether inter or intra, promotion, demotion, transfer from one outlet, for example, to another. Learning and development. Ito po importante po, total rewards management, because there should be a compensation policy, policy on payroll management, policy on payments of wages and salaries. Employee relations. These are, of course, employee relations pertaining to labor laws and industrial relations. Working conditions. When you say working conditions, how many days do you work per week? How many hours? If you're going on flexible working schedules, yes. If you're going to into hybrid, yes. I will I will present to you an HR policy na ginawa namin before. Nakikita ba? Sorry, Dar?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. I thought hindi nakita. Sorry ah. Lakihan ko lang ng konti. Excuse me for a while. This is an old policy. If someone is working in the oil and gas industry, may be familiar with the format. I'm sorry in advance. Ito po yung pinakamadugong policy. Isa sa mga pinakamadugong policy yung ginawa ko sa buhay ko. Alam nyo na kung bakit. Okay. So this is an ISO standard format po for policies. So as you can see, I never mentioned distribution list. Typically, hindi po ito kasama. If you're going to refer to the Philippine ISO documentation, hindi po ito kasama. So what is this? Document title po niya is Procedure Related to Employment Using Job Street. Yes, ISO documentation requires every single procedure po ito-document ninyo. Kaya siya madugo. Tina mentioned madugo. Yes, I can justify it because you need to be thorough in explaining things. Take note, binabasa rin po ito ng counterpart namin doon sa isang company somewhere in Europe. Okay. So, may documentation number po. If you're not accredited with ISO, it's okay. You don't put document numbers. But if you're doing ISO, ito po yon. Madugo. You have to put in the code. The code is normally given by the one handling quality assurance or QC in ISO terms. Chapter number. Kailan po siya nayos? Ano po yung binago nyo? Revision number, date. If it's a new procedure, it reflects your new procedure. If there will be changes, you will have to reflect every single item that was changed here. Ito po, purpose. As I mentioned, purpose. Ano po yung scope? Responsibility. Ito po yung sino ho yung involved, but you need to define yung mga terms na ginamit yung, especially jargons. And this is the actual procedure actually. As you meant at seen here, yes, dinocument ko po yung procedure po sa SIBA. medyo nabago na po yung SIBA, but this was the old procedure in SIBA. Candidate information, post-employment activity, what else? References, and yeah, I never included appendixes because was a working draft. Um, so this is how it's being done actually. Um, to help further, you can also if you have no documentation, by the way, and you're aiming to do policy development, my tip here is write everything and then edit it along the way. This is not as I mentioned, documents like policies are not final copies. Therefore, it is subjected to revisions and 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 error finding ways, so to speak. Like I think this policy took me like 3 weeks to fix it. Nung itinurn over sa akin to, hindi siya kasing toro as ISO would want it to be. Okay? Okay. So, thank you very much. And now, I'm turning it over to Tina. Tina, okay na ako.
All right, we open the floor for questions and answers. Para at least masagot po ni Ma'am Joy, Ma'am Jocelyn, lahat ng tanong nyo regarding sa paggagawa ng company policy. We do have a question here. Sabi po niya, which
Mm-hmm.
department po usually has the duty to interpret policies? Kasi minsan lalo na pag malaki yung kumpanya,
Oo.
it's not just creating it, but how to interpret. Who will interpret?
As I mentioned earlier, we're giving managers the flexibility to interpret the policy.
Mm,
Please note na, okay, this is, like I said, we have our HR is in charge of developing the policies po.
correct.
However, you turn it over the responsibility of managing it to your department managers. Okay?
Mm,
Hindi to HR, hindi, if it's a small company, it's HR eh, kung tutusin. If we're talking of a big multinational companies with certain departments and sections, it should be the department manager. Kumbaga, hindi, no, sorry. Extension ni HR ang department manager. We turn over certain responsibilities to managers in managing their own people.
mm,
I always say this, mas kilala ng department manager ang mga empleyado niya kesa sa atin sa HR. We know them privately, we interact with them, pero not totally.
mm,
So the interpretation will come from the manager. Pag dispute na, HR comes into the picture and explain to manager, oh, anong ginawa mo? Bakit ganito interpretation mo? I always ask the manager, ano naging basis mo to say such things? May times na minsan, even my department manager would tell them, sigurado kayo sa sinasabi nyo, mukhang may mali yata dito.
mm,
So it should be, yes, the department manager. Pero it has to be guided by HR. We have to be fair. Kasi, let's be honest, hindi lahat po ng department managers are trained to do such things. Hindi man sa minamalit ko. They become
mm.
managers without undergoing supervisory training. So, medyo challenging sa HR, lalo na pag yung personality ng manager, alam nyo na. Yun.
So, for
Ayoko sabihin
example,
masama. Hindi siya masama. It's just a matter of interpreting it. And
okay.
doon nagkakaroon po ng clashes. I've dealt with managers and staff na nagkakaroon ng differences of opinion. It's hard. Pero I'm trying to figure out kung sino mali o tama.
Okay. We have a comment here saying interpretation of policies must be uniform and within the context by which the policy was made, meaning the reason why such policy was crafted. Otherwise, confusion would result. And another one comments, why wait for the situation wherein the department manager is placed on a tight situation? Another question
Oh.
po, when you actually make a policy, Kasi 'di ba parang nung when we were younger, we were trained to make it more make a policy sound more intelligent.
Yes,
Pero what you are
I agree.
telling us right now is it's better to make it simple and understandable. Kasi
Mm-mm-mm.
kung kunyari, 'di ba meron tayong mga policy minsan yung mga flowery words pa eh.
Yeah.
How would you advise people to actually write it? Kasi you
I
don't
was
want it to,
I
oo, 'di ba?
ayoko na I am when I do my policy, it's very straightforward. I don't mince words.
For example,
Uh, Tinatry ko i-recall yung isang policy na
sige,
ginawa
oo,
ko, eh.
yung mga policies lalo na sa new normal, 'di
Ah,
ba?
okay, sorry, di ko mata I think I mentioned the overtime allowance
Okay.
earlier.
Okay.
Sinabi ko, the overtime allowance is given to any employee working for more than 2 hours starting at the time of overtime. Meaning, nag-overtime yung tao.
Hmm.
If you render more than 2 hours, therefore you are already entitled to such allowances.
Okay. Hmm.
I don't miss words when it comes to policy creation, meaning it has to be a very straightforward, like I said, clear and straightforward approach. You don't do flowery stuff. If you don't, creative writing po yun. Although there are elements of creative
Oh,
writing
correct.
when it, there are elements of creative writing in policy development kasi, but it's more like technical language.
Hmm.
When I say technical language, it has to be straightforward, walang paikot-ikot. You don't you do things in a way na it has to be clear na, uy, tungkol pala to sa overtime allowance pala. Anong entitlement ko? Anong oras ako pwedeng mag-entitled? Anong kailangan ko para makuha ko to? I-advance ba ni department manager? Kung tama yung department manager, pwede po siyang i-advance. Or if your department manager says, mag-submit muna kayo ng resibo bago ko kayo bigyan ng allowance. It has to be defined somewhere. You have
Correct.
to balance it. As I
Kasi
mentioned, we have one particular department, 200 irregardless kung ilang oras, kalmad na magpasa na ng oras, 200, hindi na yung magtatanong, magsubmit ka ng resibo afterwards. Or yung isa, 150, take note, 150 po yung allowance nila pag may resibo. Maximum po na pwede po i-claim ni employee. Pero pag wala kang resibo, 100 pesos. Plain and simple. I have to balance that. So I created, sige, 150 pag regular working day, 100 pag wala kang resibo, special holidays, regular holidays, 200. Kasi, syempre, mas mahaba yung oras ng work nila eh. Lumalagpas sa 2 hours. Then, 4 hours afterwards, you're also entitled to an additional 200 pesos. It's plain, simple language.
Miss Jocelyn, what about for example sa mga kasi we know naman that for every policy there is always a lusot. So for example with regards to the overtime, right?
Yeah.
Is the overtime ang normal na tinatanong diyan is the overtime certified or approved by line manager or just over staying 2 hours beyond the 8 hour period? Kasi
Yeah.
lumalabas diyan for example pag merong kang non-work somewhat parang webinars, for example, like training. On,
Training, yeah.
pinapatrain mo, tapos bumalik, rush hour.
Yeah.
Diba? So, instead of parang babalik ng 7 o'clock, nakarating na raw sa ng 10 o'clock. So, babayaran ba yun?
Oh.
Kasi, technically, overtime yan. Or, Christmas party, or team building,
Oh, yeah,
nakauwi
yeah, yeah.
from ganito. So, there's a lot of loopholes,
Ah.
minsan, with company policies na that makes line managers, oh nga, no? I know, dapat may overtime allowance. Pero where do you draw the line? Kasi may, or for example, nakatambay lang kasi hindi nag-start yung work, na delay. So, break time niya yung 2 hours. After that, may umano na. So, when you actually implement, may mga fine
Loopholes,
lines
yeah.
yan, loopholes.
Yeah.
How can HR do that? Kasi, mas matalino talaga ang staff pag sa hanap ng loophole.
Yun ang problema kasi when you don't create a very clear standard policy, there
Mm.
will be loopholes like gray areas. As
Oo.
Attorney Jake said, told me in in a seminar years ago, pag wala po yung policy po, lusot po yan. Your reference will be the labor code. As in a absence of a policy or an absence of a line in your code of discipline, labor code. Yun po.
Hmm.
Overtime allowances are not technically additional benefit po yan. You are not obliged to really give them an allowance. Pero out of sheer consideration na gutom ng empleyado, kailangan nila ng transportation, we give that. Pero to be honest about it, yes, there are loopholes. You need to define where the loopholes are. Uh, for us, I think ang ginawa namin was ino-audit namin every month yung resibo.
Hmm.
And
Okey.
we also define na your overtime is 1 hour and 30 minutes, meaning one
Hmm.
hour 30 minutes, fraction of 30 minutes thereafter. Kung bang nag-overtime ka hanggang, for example, 8:15 ng gabi, i-claim mo of course 2.15 hours. Pero kasi sa
Mhm.
amin, pag hindi lumagpas ng 30 minutes yan, sorry, hindi yan. 2 hours yan.
Correct,
Maliwanag na maliwanag.
correct. Sa
Uh,
akin, when there's loopholes din kasi, it is an opportunity to beef up the policy.
mm,
Kasi talagang after that,
Dabadugo.
magdadagdag ka pa ng annex. Oo nga 'no, 'pag kunyari may
Oo.
party, 'pag
Oo.
kunyari, travel time, 'pag
Yeah.
kunyari may lockdown, work from
Mm.
home, isa pa yun. My gosh, work from home
Yeah.
overtime.
Work from home is a challenge in itself. Since we're working from home, we canceled the overtime policy since then.
Ah,
So, kung hindi ka on-site, unless naka-work ka on-site, we normally do not give those allowances anymore. There are what you call flexibilities. Admittedly, isa sa mga naging problema when it comes to policies in the Philippines, hindi pumapasok yan. So, most of the policies that you have in place, biglang uh, temporarily put on hold. So, most of the time, lahat halos, I think kalahati ng policies ko this year, since last year, were like temporarily on hold because of that. What we're working on basic knowledge. It's like the great experiment on HR policies. Unless you're working in manufacturing or the BPO wherein there is a presence of employees required. Katulad ko, we're working hybrid. I'm working Monday, Friday, Wednesday, Fridays in the office and Tuesday, Thursday at home. So, you basically define where your policy is. Unless manufacturing ka na require lahat pumapasok, then pwede kang mag-excuse doon. There's no excuse not implementing your policies.
Jo, ano lang ha, I just like to
Okay.
highlight what you're
Dar,
saying.
we can't hear you. Sorry. Mahina.
Guys, can you hear me? No.
Teka.
medyo mahina.
Mahina eh. Sorry. Teka lang. Lakas ako yung akin.
Ito na
Baka
lang.
ako.
Amin kasi 'pag kunyari may lusot, pinagbibigyan one time, pero we beef it up
Oo.
para wala ng lusot later on.
This is where your
'Di ba? Kasi
policy revisions comes into the picture. Pag may na, 'di ba, like I said, you review your policy after 1 year. However, there's a disclaimer. Pag nagka-problema, natingin namin malhina yung policy, that's the time you review your policy and beef it up. As in, dagdagan ninyo. Ano yung mali? Ano sa tingin namin yung dapat hindi na applicable? Tatanggalin mo yun. And yun, you revise it. You make it more straight. You make it more formid. Sorry. Patitibayin mo.
strengthen
Patitibayin
it.
mo yung policy eh. Kasi pag,
Mm.
although yeah, admittedly, as I mentioned, it should not be at the same time not fair towards the employee. Kung legit naman, I have no issues with legitimacy. But then again, I don't know, typical sa atin, we find gray areas eh. We love gray areas. Including myself, I love gray areas. Kasi doon mo makikita kung gaano katibay o kahina ang policy mo. Sorry.
Okay, we have a question from Ma'am Michelle Delfinado. I created HR policies written in Tagalog because I consider the profile of my clients, which is 80% are welders, helpers, low rank positions. That way, it will be easier for them to clearly understand the policy. Given this, in the
Ah,
Philippines, do you need to always Kasi totoo talaga yun, may nagsasabing, hindi ko naintindihan yung nakasulat sa policy. Binigay lang sa akin, sinainan ko. Will that present a problem later on? Lalo na pag may complaint.
you need, if it's crafted in English, remember po, as I mentioned in the discussion, you need to communicate your policy. Itagalog nyo kung kinakailangan. If it's better, if you can write it down in Tagalog, which is a challenge in itself, sa totoo lang, yes, you have to. Para, well, nagluluko raw internal miking darts. Okay, anyway, so you need to put it in a language understood by everybody. Kung Bisaya yan, you have to put it in Bisaya by all means. If you're gonna put it in Tagalog, yes. I remembered I created an HR handbook for this consulting for Rona in one of my engagement. When I wrote it, it's in English. Tinagalog ko siya. It was a challenge using Google. Hindi ako purong Tagalog. I'm part Visayan. It's hard to write it down in Tagalog. So I have to rely on Google Translate every now and then. Guilty, oo.
Mm.
And
Sa,
including everything. Although the policy, I have not converted it in Tagalog. But like I said, the extension of your HR policy goes to the
yeah.
employee handbook. You provide it's acceptable siya as long as uh, everything is clear, and I applaud Michelle for translating it in Tagalog.
Mm. Sa akin, I make an effort to make our policies an active voice. Kasi there is the passive way of writing and there's the active way of writing. So, for
Mm.
example, please, parang, please, be on time. So always, kasi for example, when you're making a policy, ang very tinitignan ko talaga is pages, number of pages, and how long is the sentence. Kasi pag masyadong mahaba, next line ka na. And if that's the way you
Mm.
write it, sobrang napapahabang company policy mo. And then
Oh
whenever
yeah.
you present it, you have to print so many pages. For us kasi, ang ginagawa
Uh,
namin is,
mm.
oo. Yes, go, Ma'am Joy.
um, I think one of the challenges of converting English to Tagalog is mas mahaba pa po yung Tagalog kaysa doon sa English. So if you can make it a little, yeah, totoo yun. I try to make it Taglish para medyo okay siya. Kasi there are also Tagalog na masyadong malalim that even now, admittedly, millennials are not aware of. Totoo.
Jocelyn, I wonder if other companies, when you are onboarding employees, are they
Mhm.
still making sure that the HR goes through all the company policies per new applicant? Kasi minsan, ang
Mm.
binibigay na lang company, how do you say it, contract, right? Oh, we're discussing the contract. And then they're gonna give the company policy. Oh, this is our policy, ha? Basta, if you need to look at it, nandyan po siya. Is it
Mm.
good practice talaga for every person that comes in? The company rules and regulations talaga must be discussed eh. Kasi minsan nasa-shortcut
Yes.
yata yun eh.
I
'Di ba? Because
always
of so
make
many people
sure.
coming in.
Yeah. I always make sure when I do my orientation, I discuss snippets of the policy. It's also it's supposed to be inside a company handbook.
Mm.
Uh, mad- and some parts of your policy is inside your employment contract. We have an employment contract where some of the areas are discussed, which are some company specific policy. For example, BLSL, overtime, holiday pay, uh,
Mm.
disclosure, non-compete clause. It's
Mm.
there. Pero it's not as thorough as a policy itself. Maliliit lang na portions. You don't put
Mm.
that in your contract kasi it's gonna take like 100
Tama.
pages just to figure it out. Kasi a company policy in general can go as far as, I think yung pinaka-maikli ko is 3 pages.
Mm.
Pinakamahaba ko is around, I think, 12. And this was a policy on housing construction workers on a site.
Yeah. One of the good
To be
we're an one of the good
it
practices
down.
siguro, Ma'am Jocelyn, is that if possible, dapat talaga the HR
Everything.
should pahid the policies. All right. So,
Sorry,
na medyo choppy
sorry,
siya. Can you
pahit?
repeat what you just said?
Yeah,
Medyo
medyo
choppy kasi.
nawawala po, so medyo na ano kami, choppy kami lahat dito.
Medyo choppy. The last statement lang po.
When you are creating policies, very specific policies wherein I mentioned housing for construction workers. That was like 17 pages long, if I'm not mistaken. Mentioned earlier was 12. I think it was 17. I have to break down everything. Kasi these are people assigned up na construction, di ba? So may work site, may pabahay si employer. Kasi hindi sila pwedeng umuwi. How you cannot just manage them in, even in the inside the bunk house. So you could create house rules there. Oh, sorry, nawawala. Forgive us. May nagbigay sa akin company policy on their housing.
Okay.
I have to think of different scenarios na maaari i-violate the employee doon sa housing. Like I said, they're not managed inside that. Even HR cannot enter that bank house without a foreman's permission. Pero at the same time, hindi naman minomonitor mo sila lahat dahil hindi ka naman nakatira doon. So you have to establish those rules. Doon lang yung magiging exception ko pagdating sa luwag at flexibility na sinasabi ko. Because you cannot manage them 24/7. So you need to establish those rules.
Mm. Mm. For us, we make the effort now when we onboard an applicant. We actually
Mm-hmm.
go through our company policies. It's printed in
Mm-hmm.
English, it's explained in Tagalog and Taglish. Pero
Mm-hmm.
very important doon sa policies namin. We at the end, 'di ba, parang at the very end, we actually put
Mm-hmm.
in there signed in agreement,
Yeah.
printed name and signature and date in every single page. So we
Oh.
really make an effort talaga na lahat ng pumasok may signet hard copy kasi syempre some people are doing it as in soft parang okay next page if you agree click here I agree so
Mm-hmm.
there's a way to do it automated pero for us
Mm-hmm.
old school kami we print every single page of our policy and make sure that everybody signs every page and file it with their 201. And kahit na marami kasi
Mm-hmm.
siyang pages, like as you mentioned, 12 pages. Sa amin yata 16 pages, font size 8,
Mm-hmm.
narrow
Oh, late
margin.
yun?
Narrow, pero
Late na.
nakasulat, nababasa.
Okay.
And we go through it whenever we onboard sa orientation, we go through it line by line. So the orientation is standardized. So when somebody says, ay hindi ko nabasa yan eh, or hindi ko
Yeah.
naintindihan yan, lalabasin namin yung company, yung printouts and say, eto, nandito sa line na to, and then you signed it, and we did go
Mm-hmm.
through line by line. So, wala silang nasasabi.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody follows the same policy. Walang lusot. Pero the one orienting the policy is trained to do it standardized. This is how you're going to do it,
I see.
line by line, by line, by line. So medyo matagal yung orientation, but it provides protection later on. Kasi nobody can say, hindi na-discuss sa amin yan. Ang problema lang,
Mm-mm.
madugo. Because you have to go through it every time. Ang maganda dyan, kapag tumatagal na yung tao, walang lusot. Kasi later on, lahat ng tao magrereklamo, sasabihin na, wala sa policy yan. Meron.
Mm-mm. Meron siya.
Meron. Meron. At the end of every single page is your printed name, signature, and date. So
Mm-mm.
talagang walang lusot. That's
Yeah.
one of the things. Ang problema lang talaga minsan tumatalino, humahaba. So we really make it talaga na active voice. We're very particular on the words itself. Very simple words.
Mm-mm.
Kasi
Mm-mm.
the more you write, the more na humahaba yung policies. And
Yes.
honestly, paulit-ulit lang naman kasi yan eh. People care too much about the pay, the overtime, the termination rules, resignation rules, the social media, non-compete agreement. Pero dapat
Mm-hmm.
talaga nakasign yan. Kasi most HRs, what they do, hinahabol nila yung non-compete pag-aalis na yung employee. 'Di ba?
Oh, yeah.
Pag
Um,
magre-resign, mag-aalis na, bago i-release yung final pay, talagang marami parang HR gumagawa yun. Pinapasok yun. Dapat sa ano yan, sa
yeah, yeah.
company rules.
Ganito, for us, the non-compete clause is an annex and we insist on having it signed on the day we send the contract. There are no two ways about it. And also, it is also included in, take note meron kami NDA na hiwalay doon sa non-compete na nakalagay din doon sa contract. As I mentioned, once I give you the contract, it's there. You have to sign it and you have to acknowledge it. Um, what other company do is may handbook, then a certain back portion of the handbook or yung dulo ng handbook is a signature that you've been briefed and oriented. Part yun ng 201 file.
Mm.
It means that we have discussed this and don't tell me, unfortunately may mga cases wherein, yeah, lulusot sila. And you tell them, di ba inorient na namin kayo? In fact, you signed that acknowledgement receipt. It's there in your file. Ganun kasimple sagot ko sa mga ganyang issues eh. So, uh, one of the things with policy kasi, it's dynamic or depend, like when I say dynamic po, depende like 1 year talaga yung ideal. Totoo yon. However, if there are situations wherein you put into the question on the existence or missing part of the policy, then you need to revise your policy accordingly to cover that particular area na naging technically gray sa mata ng HR o sa department manager. This is where your manager would be involved in. I normally suggest involving managers. Although dito sa Velocity, I'm the one doing the policies myself and then I send it to everybody, sa mga department managers, if not the higher committee, to have it reviewed and revised. The challenge is disseminating it kasi there are no involvements kasi to begin with. Pag ni-request sa akin specific, dine-develop ko siya talaga. And I do a lot of research. Um, Benchmarking, I call it benchmarking. You take note of what you see online. Marami pong policies online po. The challenge is looking for that ideal scenario wherein i-create ako ng policy, for example. Sabi ko, how do you express this? Then I do Google it. Then suddenly makita, uy, this is okay. Then I integrate it. It's no, you may call it plagiarism. I don't think it's called plagiarism because it depends on the industry you work in eh. Kung alam mo, i-submit ko to sa manager and it says, I don't like that. Can you please remove that? Then tatanggalin ko siya. Or I would change it into no matter that into a sentence or a statement that would be acceptable to everybody. I remember it, if I remember it right, we have a policy on bereavement. Pero take note, iba yung ginagamit na term sa Hong Kong. Compassionate leave. They define compassion. Sa atin ang bereavement pag namatay, God forbid namatay na. Pero kasi sa kanila, ang compassionate leave doesn't just involve death in the family.
Mm.
It involves people who are taking care of their loved ones na may sakit and may take leave, paid leaves. That is how they define compassionate. And the manager in Hong Kong says, can you please make it as compassionate leave instead of bereavement? Sabi ko, hindi, bereavement po yung term na ginagamit po namin dito. Nag-uusap na po tayo sa namatayan, hindi yung nag-aalaga ng tao, ng tao na been sick for a long time. So I had to really correct them on that particular area.
We
Take
have
note
a
ha,
question.
iba po yung compassionate leave sa bereavement. Maliwanag na ho tayo doon ha.
We have a question po by Mary Ann Maan. If
Mm-mm.
HR handbook is stored in a common file, accessible
Mm-mm.
to all employees, do I still need to get acknowledgement?
Yes, you need to.
If, for
Um,
example, opo, kasi
uh,
given na, for example, di ba, parang right now, it is
lapit
somewhat
na
the new
kanoy.
normal.
Mm-mm.
How can HRs go around it, especially since a lot of people are hybrid or some of them not reporting to work? How can you guarantee rin na may acknowledgement sa changes of your HR policy?
If there are changes in the HR policy, you still need to inform everybody. With the current situation wherein not everybody is working,
Mm.
email will be your best bet. If you can arrange for a Zoom or Microsoft Teams meeting, the better. Then after once you send them the acknowledgement receipt. Elec- Pick note, hindi lahat po can write down their signature. Mostly electronical po yung pagsasign. That's enough. That is sufficient proof enough for everybody being informed. Uh, it's a like I said, it's a challenge in itself to implement policies into the pandemic unless nagwo-work pa kayo on site. Uh, I think one of the challenges then is making sure that everybody is complying. This is where your department manager comes into the picture. Uh, I'm working in IT outsourcing, but my role is shared services, meaning you have business units managing their own people and you expect them that they manage it thoroughly. Papasok ka lang sa picture if you have violations or if you're looking for other people wherein, uy, HR 100, kailangan ma-involve ko dito. I expect that my department managers are managing them well within the company rules or policy that we created.
Here's the question. If, lalo na in the new normal, and
Mm-mm.
there are certain changes in terms of policy. Like for example, yung 'di ba sabi mo when nag-lockdown, then most people had to work from home, so you have to make big changes with regards to
Yes.
lalo na your overtime policy.
Yeah.
And you share it to them, you email it to them, inform them. Is it an option for employees not to acknowledge and not to agree to the changes of policy? Kasi may mga staff na nagsasabi na I'm not signing it. I don't agree to it because it's not beneficial for me and you should
Mm-mm.
still pay me because 'di ba? Parang I didn't acknowledge, I didn't agree. How can
Uh,
what does that leave the HR manager? Kasi syempre hirap
mm-mm.
naman na you've created a policy and still like maybe 10% or 15% of your personnel don't want to
Mm-mm.
accept it. And their excuse lang is hindi ko siya sinign. Hindi ko sinign, hindi ko siya
Mm-mm.
tatanggapin. Where does management prerogative come in?
Um, when you're working in our organization, it's expected that you follow the rules, even though, admittedly, we're into the pandemic. There would be differences of opinion, and I do respect that.
Mm.
However, if you're doing policies like this, alam ko medyo long shot po ang dating ito. If you have Outlook,
Mhm.
you get may options kasi doon to whether or not they seen and they acknowledge. I forgot the
Mm.
actual buttons, but there's it. Ang
Mm.
ginagawa ko, pinipindot ko either both of them. Once I know that they received it, it's more like informally acknowledging that there is a new policy. It's much better if they sign it. If there are issues, we need to resolve it, as in, ma'am, hindi ko po gusto to. Can
Apa.
we talk privately? Like I said, communicating the policies goes beyond the town hall meetings, the memos, the emails. They don't, like I said, Filipinos do not like ask questions. As in, tahimik yan, titingin yan sa'yo at iniisip mo, sigurado ka may tanong ka. Then, afterward, they approach you privately, then say, ma'am, pasensya na po, hindi ko po natanong. Blah, blah, blah. Normal yun. I'm used to it. Even in Discord forum, magtatanong kami, walang kumikibo. So, I would appreciate if the employee do not agree with what they say and tell me. So, we can resolve this matter. Baka meron kaming hindi nakikita na nakikita nila. Passive-aggressive tayo by nature. So, I expect that people be open about it. Kasi natatakot sila sa retaliation. Na, uy, matigas na ulo nito. Parang may red flag ka somewhere in your head for that.
Apa. Yes.
And I would rather have people question me rather than go the roundabout. To give you an idea, roundabout yung last time ko. I created that policy and then I was like explaining it to the manager more than I can count. And then suddenly, nagulat ako, I got an email from the GM telling me, "Oy, she doesn't agree with what you said." And
Oo.
Normie is like, how many times did I tell you that? It not just once, but twice. Why do you have to say, but pag ang Pilipino kasi hindi happy yan, magbabypass yan. And it happened. Like I said, it's a roundabout. Just tell me what you don't like. We can work it out. Don't make me repeat myself. It took me like 3 weeks to recover from that issue. Kasi parang, what did I do wrong? I just corrected your practice. Mahirap pag nagko-correct ka ng existing practice eh. Lalo na pag pino-formalize mo yung documentation. Everybody understood except that person. It was hard for me. Sabi ko, manager pa naman, ito pa naman mag-i-implement ng policy ko por Diyos por Santo. I'm not against the manager. Yun nga lang, we have professional differences and it was hard for me, like I said. Ikaw yung mag-i-implement eh. I made your life easier. Siguro nag-iisip din siya na, pinahirapan mo buhay ko. Asan yung pinahirap? Like I said, asan yung part na hindi mo gusto? And I was surprised he told me, based on the feedback I got from his staff na nakaintindi ng policy na yun, gusto niya exclusive sila. It's like, ha? I'm making it pakinabangan ng bumbayan eh.
Is it a democracy? Like, if you make a policy, do employees even have the right to disagree and not follow company rules? Because it happens, right? Pagdating niya, wala siyang alam. Then, later on, biglang lalabas and say na, I don't want to follow that. I didn't know that was what I was signing up for.
Yeah.
So, that really puts the HR manager in a very difficult position kasi pwede palang tumanggi? Pwede bang tumanggi?
Ako, ito personal opinion ko lang to ha, not necessarily the standpoint of management. For me, it's healthy to disagree. However, for ito ha, if you sign for this, bakit ka tumatanggi at this point? Meaning, there might be some issues. Maybe you enjoyed this privilege before you joined us. You're like comparing apples to oranges mode tayo dito. As far as I'm concerned, I'm very transparent with recruiting people. I lay down the cards na there are things you may not enjoy that you previously enjoyed. If you accept this, meaning you're accepting it implicitly. Diba? Telling me otherwise is like, teka muna, are you willing, I'm willing to talk to that person. Pero if it boils down to, yeah, It's your
Mm.
call. It's your call. I mean, I'm not gonna stop anybody from, frankly speaking, I am not gonna stop anybody from leaving an organization if they're not happy.
Mm.
It's a
Okay.
burden. Kasi hindi maligiging maligaya yung employee eh. Kawawa yung employee. Kawawa din si employee because we also invest, admittedly, management invest on people by getting them on board and giving them what they wanted. And we're expecting that person. A little
Mm.
bit of difference would, it's okay. It's normal. Pero if you're not, it gonna affect the way you interact with people. Kasi minsan may mga spillovers na tinatawag nila na, I don't like this. Baka mamaya magka-problema ka when it comes to dealing with them on the day-to-day basis. If not, baka mamaya matanggal sa trabaho. May magkaroon ng consequences or something. As much as possible, everything should be talked about. Even before
Mm.
the person comes on board.
Mm. Sa
Kasi
akin,
mahirap, mahirap.
it's the 6 month probationary period is
Yeah.
very critical in assessing. A lot of people think that the 6 month probationary period is all about performance only. It's
Mm-mm.
not. It's also about fit and the ability of the person to work with different people in the organization. Sa akin, there is a difference between taking away benefits that has been enjoyed for a long period of time. If nabigay mo na yon
Mm.
sa manager or sa staff, tapos tatanggalin mo, you must make sure that the exchange is fair. And pumayag
Mm-mm.
talaga sila, right?
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Pero when it comes to specifying company policies, like for example, you have a company policy na hanapan ng loophole, so you issued another memo to strengthen that policy and ayaw ng staff, then that's a different thing because that was not something that they've ever enjoyed naman in the first place. It was not taken away from them. It is just a
Mm.
clarification of a policy that was given long before. So if that's the
Ah,
case na ganun na, medyo
ganun din.
it's different eh, 'di ba? So you have to be very careful na the people that you have in your company can work as a team
Yeah.
because if you have a superstar pasaway, everybody will be working for that superstar pasaway. 'Di ba?
And
And
for, yeah.
ang hirap
And for me,
mag-proceed.
you hire people for their ito, di ba, I've seen you've seen this already. You hire people for their attitude, not just for skills. Because skills can be transferred. Skills can
And
be
train.
taught and trained.
Mm.
If it's affect the whole organization, yeah, we have a problem here. Please note then that the probationary employee has also some employee rights as well. Meaning,
Correct.
uh, during the probationary period is an assessment period if the person fits into the organization. If you wanna terminate people because they don't, although they're perform but they're not jiving in, you need to document everything. That is where
Yes.
the policy comes into the picture na how to document behavior. How do you document performance? Yeah, like I mentioned, diba? I-mention ko dun sa important na document that you have to put into the the HR department. It's employee relations.
Mm.
You need to document everything. Kung hindi siya, kung star performer siya pero hindi siya star participant into the group dynamics, yeah, you have to think twice about regularizing person. Pero take note, document everything. May security of tenure siya. Hindi lang po solidified yung security of tenure ng tao yun.
We have a feedback from Sir June Aspacio. He says, knowledge of statutory construction is a must for an HR since
Mm-mm.
policies and rules must be aligned to labor laws. Choice
Yes.
of words is very important.
Yes,
Must,
yes.
must is different from may or shall. So
Yeah.
dapat talaga ang
You
HR
need,
manager magaling ang reading comprehension because there
hindi
is
lang
a very big difference.
hindi lang bigyan comprehension. You have to use specified words. Like for example, generally, typically, Sir June mentioned some of the words that can be used na it has to be there. It doesn't have to, it has to be explicit, not passive po. Pag passive
Okay?
yan, mababasa ng empleyado na parang, uy, nag-hesitate pa yata tong policy na to. It has to be very explicit. This I mentioned earlier, explicit. That is it.
Meaning
So,
must, 'di ba? Must,
talaga
need to,
must, need
require.
to require, what you call, generally, typically. Yeah, you need
Kasi
to
they're,
you
oo.
need to choose your words carefully. Like I said, policy development is not creative writing po. It's a technical language oriented HR policy. You don't need flowery words. Kung flowery words na, siguro mag-a-apply lang po yan pag Christmas party or award ceremony. But HR policy is a technical document. Very
Okay.
technical.
Okay,
Kasi
kasi,
the mere
oo.
word of technical, you can use it beyond your organization. To explain further, to give you one particular example, I wrote a blog somewhere in July telling about Kume. She
Mm.
deleted the tweet na, telling the person na I heard this person, but she is asking for more than what she is, so
Worth.
she's worth ba.
Okay.
I wrote about this in HR Carousel. By the way, I'm also a blogger, but I stopped, I think, because of that
Ma'am
major
Jocelyn is
burnout.
also a blogger. She actually
Yeah,
has a blog. Yeah, so
I
we'll
wrote it
attach
twice.
that.
I wrote two parts actually, telling what went wrong and telling what went wrong with the recruiter. Yung isa po, pinuna ng isang quote-unquote, alam mo na yun, to explain, expert daw siya somewhere. And this is from one company. Initially, I was planning to ignore that. Pero kasi, I told him, thank you, you are entitled to your beliefs. And I never argue. Unless nasa Facebook ako. I do argue in Facebook. LinkedIn, iba yan eh. Ibang territorial LinkedIn. You can't just make battle. And then he answered below the belt na. Take note, below the belt na po yun. Naninita na siya ng grammar and sentence construction. I talked to Sonny Santos. Yes, hi sir. Kamusta na ko kayo? And he told me, I'm okay with the first comment. The second comment beyond that point. This is where HR and corporate company comes into the picture. They have a very strict policy on social media. Take note po, HR practitioner, social media policy po ito. Meaning you can report somebody because they did something wrong to you. What I did was, I went to that website and double checked it. Take note, kung anong sinabi niyo po sa LinkedIn and the name is there and you're working with this organization po, they will take you seriously.
Mm.
Kasi this is a stance, an informal company stance that we do not tolerate
Mm.
boomers. He used boomers on me. Yeah, I'm that old, pero I'm not that old. I took it quite literally, the word boomer. Boomer, by the way, is an insult. Meaning you're old, you're too old, you're narrow-minded, you're myopic. I reported it to their hotline. By the way, the hotline is a separate entity. And then 3 weeks after that, the representative from this company called me and got the report. Ganun po ka-powerful po ang policy. I told the recruiter, I don't like what he said. What he said was an informal statement from your company that you are not a good company to begin with.
Mm.
Nakuha ko kasi attention ng management nila because of my statement. But
Okay.
mind you, umiral yung pagiging HR ko. Sabi ko, I want you to teach him a lesson. I don't want him terminated. A few weeks after that they answered, they already made some actions. However, medyo confidential po yung action. Even I don't know what they did to that guy. Ganun ho ka straightforward at explicit yung policy. This is where you need to say explicit, anyway, straightforward, wala pong bola. If you want creative writing into the policy, please ignore creative writing in this state. A little bit siguro, but not too much.
Could you reiterate po for Mr. Alexander C? Kasi ang tanong po niya, what is the procedure for upgrading the company rules and regulations?
If you're going to upgrade your company rules and regulation, number one po, what were the circumstances that prompted the change.
Mhm.
Kasi, as I mentioned earlier, you only require to review your company policy or HR policy once a year. However,
Mm.
as I mentioned, there's a disclaimer, pag may nangyaring insidente wherein the policy has been compromised or questionable or
Mm.
nawala, may gray area na initially hindi nyo po nakita,
Mm.
pero lumabas po dun sa ano ninyo. Lumabas
Mm.
dun sa incident na yon. This is where you start reviewing, analyzing what
Okay.
went wrong, and revise the policy po. Pero take note, if you're doing it on your own, involve your managers or whoever that department where that incident happened. Kasi
Mm.
you need buy-in as early as now when you create your policies. Sa kaso ko kasi I don't have problems with buy-in. If I initiate on my own, okay lang. If your company is particular on those areas, yes, you need to talk to that person or department managers or management na, uy, kailangan natin baguhin kasi may nangyaring incident na ganito. We need to do it now. We need to correct that error. It's not making it is at the same time you have to take into consideration po yung employee welfare. Baka mamaya hindi nyo alam na may nasanggana pa kayong number one labor code, jurisprudence, department order or advisory or basic rights, employee rights po. Balanse po to dapat.
Ma'am Joy, ito, tanong ko. Sometimes, management makes bad policies. Paano mo malaman na bad policy? Pag said mo, lahat ng tao nagwelga. Nangyayari yun, right?
Oo, totoo yun.
It happens na parang when you make a policy na hindi masyadong pinag-isipan, pag send mo, agad-agad lahat ng tao nag-react.
Mhm.
Ayaw sumunod, pinag-usapan, gusto mag-town hall. You know, it's very damaging internally for a company kasi hindi talaga, wala pang buy-in, siguro
Mm-mm.
emergency, for whatever
Mm-mm.
reason ni-release.
Mm-mm.
When that happens, so syempre, nalabas mo na, na-announce mo. What can you suggest management to do para mag-backtrack without looking too stupid? Kasi,
Um, mm,
'di ba nabigay na eh, and then nakita ng tao, lahat ng tao
na flip
gumanon.
na flip-flopping moment ang tawag ko doon.
Oo, pero paano magawa ang flip-flopping moment na hindi masyadong nakakahiya? Kasi pag binalitan mo agad, tas nag-backtrack ka, ibig sabihin, mali talaga yung nagawa in the first place. Kulang talaga ng bayan, hindi na pag-isipan, or whatever reason it might be. But it happens.
It does.
It
It does
happens.
happen.
What would you do if you were the HR director there and because of a policy you've made, naging
Ako,
topic tuloy?
as much as possible, iniiwasan ko mag-flip-flopping. Hindi maiwasan.
Kaya
Kung
nga eh.
ayoko
Pero
kasi ng
nangyayari yun
flip-flopping.
eh.
Ayoko ng flip-flop moment eh. Kasi parang tango lang yan eh. One step forward, two step back. Alam mo na.
Oo. Pero nangyayari
Um,
yun.
this is where transparency comes into the picture. Ito personal opinion ko transparency. If your company is transparent, if they feel the mistake, they have to rectify it to issue another statement or changes in the policy you made without looking so embarrassed. Pero kasi, Pilipinos ay, pag napahiya ang Pilipino, sigurado na yan eh. Ay, hindi ko inaamin yan. Pero if you're working with multinationals that have been very much transparent about how they do things, it's not gonna be embarrassing. It's more like, oh yeah, they admit they're human. We're okay with that. Pero Pilipinos parang, uy, mata si mga kilay, ay backtracking to. From the very start, I would suggest transparency, an honest communication between people. Sandali lang po yung mapahiya. Sandali lang po yun. Pero kung tinuloy-tuloy niyo yun, yeah, tuloy-tuloy rin papahiya ninyo kasi you're gonna be laugh about it. I mean, laugh out. Paglabas ng office, uy, grabe naman to. Yung policy, napaka-flip-flopping.
Mm.
If you're open and transparent and you admit your mistake, there's nothing wrong with it. Tao lang naman tayo eh. Policies are created by humans like us. It has flaws like everybody else.
Mm. Sa akin, a good advice that I got from today's session is to get buy-ins from departments
Yeah.
before you even formally issue a policy.
Mm-mm.
If you are a good HR manager, never issue any announcements in a bubble. You must make sure na
Everything
bago
is
ka
in college.
maglabas, dapat nakausap mo na yung mga taong maiingay. Kasi meron yan sa isang company na yung medyo, doesn't matter what positions they might be, but they might be loud, they're very influential inside the company, and you will need their support to implement that policy. So before you make changes to a policy, dapat na-explain mo na yan sa I mean, just call these people and actually explain to them. Maglalabas ka ng policy, tsikahin mo sila. Lahat naman ng tao marites, 'di ba? So tell them why.
Marites sa Marisol.
'Di ba marites na? You tell them why. Uy, alam mo, last time may nangyaring ganito. Kaya just to give you a heads up, we're actually going to change the policy na ganito. And actually listen to a bit of their feedback so that you can change it a little bit. Para paglabas na yun, hindi sila napapahiya kasi when management releases a policy, ang next question diyan sa mga tao, mga rank and files niyan is they're gonna ask that person, alam mo ba? Do you know about this change? And Lord help you if your influencers inside your company are
Yeah.
unaware you're gonna do this. Right? So if
Yeah.
you're gonna make major changes, you gotta meditate everyone na alam na ng tao anong mangyayari, lalo na kung bad news. 'Di ba?
Yeah. I
Kasi
agree with
once na
that. Yeah.
nirelease mo na yon, ang hirap na mag-backtrack. Pero once you actually talk to these influencers, so to speak, because every company has that, eh, kahit na son of boss or manager or kahit
Oo
yung
nga.
warehouse guy,
Child of
yung
the owner.
security guard, merong marites na talaga yan eh. Yung mga
Yeah.
yung alam mong pag kinausap mo, chismisan na lahat. Sometimes it is better to feed information to these people before you formally announce something. Para makita mo na, tingin mo ba tama ba yung ginagawa ko? You're asking for feedback so you can change your policies din na maging acceptable to all. Kasi once na nasend mo na talaga, ang hirap na talagang bawiin, nakakahiya.
Oo, totoo yun.
And pag kunyari, if you're going to apologize, go through the same process. Alam mo, nahihiya nga ako eh. Admit it, di ba? Pero we're gonna issue another one to correct it. Para lumabas
Yeah,
talaga
yeah.
that management is listening and will want to change. We
And
have
yan,
a
and
question.
transparency then. It helps to have transparent and open communication. Even HR practitioners should recognize there's a grapevine somewhere there. As in,
Oo.
nagugulat may pumuputok somewhere dyan na galing sa grapevine. I mean, grapevine can be a good or bad source of information. When it just you have to use it wisely.
Mm.
Yeah, may tanong
We
nga
have
dito.
comment na kay Michelle Delfinado. The HR orientation we give for our employees is part of their onboarding kit. We send the COC to all newly hired through email, and the acknowledgement form with their signature must be submitted on their first day. Then address
Yeah.
whatever concerns and questions they might have. Sa akin, added tip, pag ayaw mag-sign na acknowledgement, wag mo pa start. 'Di ba?
Or
Kasi
should I
may mga
say,
tao.
or should
Wag mo
I
pag
say, if
oo.
there is, di ba I mentioned that there is a part of Outlook or any email that may indicate na, uy, pinadala ko, natanggap, not necessarily acknowledge, tanggap. That's one form of documentation I do.
We're very
Or,
strict eh. Pag wala acknowledgement, hindi kami nagsistart. We don't ask kasi
hindi,
mahirap
meron
na
akong company
malabo.
na ganun dati. Pag hindi mo in-acknowledge, you're not gonna start. I think that
Yes.
was SM.
Ah,
SM, oo, may pito si SM.
sabi nila dito, the only issue
Training.
when an employee follows a policy if it impacts religion. Does it matter?
Um, the only problem I had with dealing with religion, take note Christmas party po most of the time or your employee engagement, especially when it violates their principles.
Mm.
For example, I'm not singling out this member ang dating doon, they're not required
Yeah.
to participate in Christmas parties. Jehovah's Yata are not also in, they're not too crazy about the idea because it's their religion. As long as it's a minor incident, I am okay with that. Kasi you can't force them eh. It's their religion. And I think there are also sanctions that involves them participating in certain items. But mind you, meron kaming isang miyembro ng ang dating doon. Majority for, hindi ko alam na miyembro siya noon until such time I just recently discovered it in Facebook. Pero mind you, he participates in Christmas parties. Hindi mo sa KJ, hindi, the rest ayaw, and we can't force these people, and I respect that. Like I said, if it's a minor thing, you can overlook. Like I said, we're talking about flexibility here. If it violates the rules, the religion, we can't force them. Unless talagang may major incident na may impact sa organization in general and meaning injury and damage to the organization and the people around it. Then you can do whatever. You can basically, oh, sige, may violation ka. Explain yourself in writing why we would we should forgive you. Pag minor things, I'm okay with that. Mostly kasi magiging issue mo lang na team building at Christmas party. Dalawang issue lang yan. It doesn't impact the organization. Although, yeah, minsan, lumalabas wala kayong cooperation sa amin. Hindi kayo nakikisama. But you can't force them, really.
We are already at 5:30 and we
Wow!
sobrang napaano kasi talagang marami, as you mentioned ago, parang there's a lot of nuances in creating and implementing company policies. Mabilis mag-create, pero once you release it kasi
There's a
parang
mean
maraming
time.
loopholes. Nagkakaroon talaga ng loopholes. You really need to update. And matatalino talaga ang mga employees. Lalo na pag malaki na
Yes.
yung organisasyon. Ang hirap talaga, lalo na kung gusto mong hanapan ng lusot. So, as we end, Miss Jocelyn, could you give us some last words and also how to contact you and also your blog para we can put it in
Okay.
the comment section as well?
Okay, my blog is called HR Carousel. I started it last year. It started as like HR. Actually, the actual title is HR Nomad because I was doing it. I was like developing it during my pre-op Upwork days. Uh, the two blogs that I mentioned about Kume finding fault in the hiring process, and while the recruiter is like, what moment for me is there. uh, this is not an academic paper po for just for Santo for everybody's ano. If you're gonna go after me in grammar and syntax errors in my what I did, please ignore. Please do not do it to me. I had enough already. Okay. I can be reached to LinkedIn. My name is Joseline M. Alosbanos, CHRP. I have a Twitter account, Joy Alosbanos. At Facebook, yes, you can reach out there. Normally, I ignore requests unless maglagay kayong I'm sorry, medyo mahigpit ako kasi because I have bad experiences right now with people linking to me then 3 days after nawawala. And I hated that. Wag nyo, hindi po Tinder ang Facebook, maawa po kayo sa akin particular.
Ah.
What else? I can be reached if you have any questions. You can reach it to Messenger. I have entertained a lot. By the way, HR Carousel has also have his Facebook account. By the way, although hindi pa ako nag-answer Twitter. Last words. If you're going to develop your policies and procedure, you have to take into consideration all the statement I said, plus the fact na you can you can also look for policies and procedure online, pero you have to have it tailor fitted to your organization. Hindi po kopya ko yun ng kopya tapos you don't take into consideration what is your current setup, what your organization stands for, the industry you work in. This is how you do things. What else? Good luck. If you're going to look for a more tedious how to do your policies procedure, alam kong shameless plug to You can look for Mr. Rolando Turla's Facebook page, Silent Reach. He conducts training on policy development and implementation. This is just the surface of what policy development is. Uh, HR policy and ano is very tedious and very mind breaking. Kung hindi madugo, mind breaking po because you need to have the tact, the patience, and the tenacity to do policies po. Hindi po biro gumawa ng policies because it affects not just the organization but also people around it. So I would suggest, yeah, take that seriously. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat.
And my last words for this is that in any organization, kasi you're going, the whole organization is going towards a single goal. And for you to have this journey, it's very important that everybody follows the same rules and regulations. When I say
Mm,
everyone, it's not just the lowest, but also the highest. So you must construct your policy in a way that is fair for everyone and can last for many, many years. Because if when there is dispute, and there will be dispute inside an organization, ang babalikan nyo lang talaga is yung
ang
rules and
policy.
regulations. It's not about sino yung owner, sino yung malakas, sino yung line manager. Then it is really the company policy that protects all.
Mm,
So sometimes parang sabihin ng staff, ay ano naman ako, I'm just like a welder, I'm a messenger. Who protects me aside from the labor code? Is it really Dole? The answer is actually your company policy protects you. Kung ano
mm,
yung nasulat doon, yun ang dapat isunod ng lahat, regardless of rank or tenure or how influential they are in the company. Okay?
mm.
Kung nakasulat, yun yung susundin. Pag hindi nakasulat, loophole yun. Right?
Isang
May
malaking
konting lusot. May lusot.
or
Right?
gray area. Ang tawag natin doon gray area.
Kaya, a lot of
Yeah.
people should read the company policy. The biggest mistake of employees and HRs is that once na nakasulat na yung policy, hindi na nila pinapansin for many, many years. Kasi ang the company policy is one of the most boring things you can ever read. And you think, alam ko na yan. But when there is a conflict and you go back to your company policy, you will realize what you know is not enough. And may butas pa pala. Akala mo ito talaga yung policy. Pero pag binalikan mo dun sa sulat, hindi pala. At pag walang sulat, walang agreement, free for all tayo. So very important for small companies, lalo na for those without company policies, please ensure you have a company policy. If you don't like to write, hire a consultant. If you don't have money for a consultant, search in Google. Plagiarism ba? Well, make changes. Customize it to your needs of your company. Kahit na one page, two page, three page, at least start in writing a policy. And as you go along, make changes to that. Strengthen it as you do it. 'Di ba? And use that talaga as your guiding light. Because if you do not have anything written, magkakaproblema talaga kayo. It's really just a matter of time. And without any policy, you cannot terminate. Sorry ang hirap mag-terminate pag wala kang rules and regulations hindi
Ay,
ba?
oo. Totoo
Di ba,
yun.
totoo yun, pag wala kang rules and regulations, wala kang company policy, kahit anong ginawa, sabi ng tao, for example, umabsent, tapos bumalik uli. Sabi mo, hindi siya pwede pumasok kasi walang medical certificate. Wala naman sa rules and regulations mo eh. In the absence of any written documentation or agreement, DOLE will always side in the favor of the employee and not the employer. So to prevent these things from happening, make a policy. Even if it's a general policy, it's fine. Right? And after that, make changes as you go along. Fun tip ko lang, number one, as much as possible, make sure that all your employees sign off on the policy. Mura lang po ang papel. Mas malaki ang problema sa loob ng kumpanya pag walang nakasulat. Number two, make sure to read it again. A lot of HRs do not read it anymore. Kayong mga HR, when was the last time you actually read your policy? Totoo lang, since the time you started. I don't think a lot of people ever read it. 'Di ba? Parang Hanggang
Oo.
walang sumabog, walang nagbabasa.
Or
Make
kung
sure
walang
to read it.
violation at
Oo,
wala,
walang
hindi nyo
pilosopo.
ma-address yun. Dahil wala
Oo.
yun sa policy nyo. Good luck sa inyo lahat. Yun ang
And
masasabi ko.
number three, a lot of HRs kasi ako it's very difficult for you to rise up in HR if you do not write policies. Totoo yon. Kasi a lot of people, they're good at yung computing for payroll, computing, paying for benefits, hiring, recruiting. But if you do not craft policies, parang hindi ka masyadong holistic pa. Policy making is one of the way for you to actually put yourself in the shoes of both employer and employee. Kasi it has to be win-win. So if there's an opportunity for you to make a policy, huwag po kayong matakot. It might be challenging. Baka sigurado, hindi magaling kayong mag-English, hindi kayo magaling magsulat. Pero take on that challenge kasi it really broadens your mind to put policies on paper. It's a different experience talaga. Huwag kayong matakot. Kasi karamihan ng nakikita kong mga guests natin, may experience talaga gumawa ng policy one point in their life. And I think that sort of experience, while scary, has helped them become better HR managers. Because for you to construct a policy, you must have holistic thinking and strategic thinking and critical thinking and the ability to communicate. Mahirap, madugo, pero still try it kasi if you've never tried it, hindi mo talaga hindi mo magagawa, parang kulang hindi ba? So I would invite people to try to do it. Kahit na nakakatakot, pag binigyan kayo ng ganong klaseng problema, take on it, huwag kayong matakot. So with this, I'd like to thank Ma'am Jocelyn so much.
Thank you.
Ma'am Jocelyn, can we invite you again to the next HR Cafe?
Yeah, sure.
Next
I
year,
think
next year
I
May
think you
nagtatanong nga company documentation 'di ba?
yeah, nakita ko nga eh. I think one of the thing with HR kasi is documentation. Oo. Kasi
Yeah,
hindi man sa lahat, marunong sa mag-document, but the right way of doing documentation. Uh, HR policy is documentation in itself. More like, yeah, technical writing, pero it's still documentation. I'm okay with that. I'm open to the next year's
sige.
engagement.
First quarter of next year.
Yeah, sure.
Pang New Year's gift mo na sa amin. Around
Yeah, I can
February.
also, by the way, I can also talk about HR and the gig economy. I had it last year with Ronadale. One of the issues right now, ito meaning ko, this is one of those issues that will be facing the great resignation or the gig economy. The gig economy is very much active. I'm also part of the gig economy, by the way, because I have consulting and online work. Right now, marami na nakakadiscover. I can talk about that and documentation.
That would be perfect. So
Yeah.
we will look forward to Miss Jocelyn to come back at the HR Cafe. And thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us up to this time. So with
Wow,
this, we greet
7:40,
you.
5:42.
Oo nga Pero puro question and answers
Overtime.
Puro question
Pero
and answers to be
I like,
fair.
I'm seeing the feedback. They're okay with that. Surprisingly, this is one of those engaged people who wants to be knowledgeable in policy development. Madugo po ang policy development ang meaning ko. Pero once you get the hang of it, you can bring it elsewhere. It's a skill worth learning. And admittedly, hindi lahat po ng HR practitioner marunong pong policy development.
Yes
I
po.
learned it. By the way, I have no formal training. It just recently that I went into seminars just to make sure that I'm on the right track on doing these things.
Okay. So with
Yeah, thank
everything, thank
you.
you so much. And let's now end this broadcast.